Chapter 1528. Boom! A terrifying explosion resounded in the sky as Nangong Dushio's palm descended. Merciless killing intent descended on Mo Rushi and Cher once again. No! Nye Tian suddenly sensed something and bellowed. The dragon roar shook the sky and made him seem even more heroic. His power had been exhausted, and his aura was weakening bit by bit. His blood chi was dissipating in the air. Even if he had an obsession in his heart, there was nothing he could do. At this moment, Nye Tian felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. His entire body was filled with soul-tearing pain. His strength was too weak. He had really reached his limit. Don't hurt them. At the same time, Nye Dao's voice resounded. His aged eyes were filled with tears, and his expression was extremely tragic. He was the Alliance Master of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, an existence that stood at the peak of the 9 major domains, but he could not protect his family at this moment. Sister Rushi. At the same time, Cher's voice resounded. With a shout, she attacked with the fallen god's sword. Boundless red sword intent whizzed out, but it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Could not withstand a single blow. Cher rushed into the sky and faced the attack without any hesitation. If someone had to be sacrificed, she was willing to take Mo Rushi's place. Cher. The sudden scene caused Nye Tian's expression to change. His huge dragon body froze in the air. The pulse of 3 life? You will all die. Nangong Dushio sneered. It was a joke for Cher to block his palm with her strength. The palm descended with a resounding boom, about to land on Snow's body. At this critical moment, something strange happened. Who dares to hurt Her Highness? A deep roar resounded in the void. Then, a black-clothed figure appeared. A black palm shadow appeared and soared into the sky. Boom! The 2 palms collided and there was a loud explosion. Boundless shockwaves surged. At the next moment, a strange power appeared and rescued Mo Rushi and Cher before the shockwaves completely exploded. Nangong Dushio frowned when she felt the impact of the wave. She was forced back a few thousand meters. He steadied himself and saw a black shadow appear at a low altitude. The figure was not tall and looked like a teenager. Vaguely, the appearance of the figure seemed a little immature. At that moment, Nye Tian caught sight of the figure and exclaimed, "Earth Chief!" The person who appeared at the critical moment was none other than the inescapable Net's Earth Chief. At the same time, Nye Dao's figure also appeared. He struck out with his palm and forced Jiang Lai back. Inescapable Net! Nangong Dushio suddenly reacted and looked at Earth Chief's figure with flickering eyes. He hadn't expected Earth Chief to appear at this time. Huijiushan and Jiang Lai were also stunned. They exchanged a glance with each other and their expressions became somewhat complicated. Earth Chief's figure flashed over to Cher's side, and then he actually knelt down on one knee and spoke respectfully, "Your Highness, I'm late." Cher ignored him and looked anxiously at Mo Rushi, asking, "Sister Rushi, are you all right?" Mo Rushi let out a long breath and gently shook her head, indicating that she was fine. It had to be said that Earth Chief had come at the right time. "Your Highness." Huijiushan and the others saw Earth Chief's attitude towards Cher and were stunned. Their expressions were extremely ugly. They couldn't understand why Cher would be associated with the inescapable Net. Even Earth Chief, one of the 2 Supremes, was kneeling to her. Could the inescapable Net be related to the Netherworld Emperor? Huijiushan's eyes narrowed and he was puzzled. Boom! And at this moment, the space around them trembled as a black-robed silhouette directly descended. This silhouette was about the same size as Earth Kuei. In fact, it was even shorter than Earth Kuei. However, the aura exuding from it was incomparably majestic. Just standing there, it was like a vast ocean unfathomably deep. The arrival of this figure stunned everyone once again. This person's aura was extremely powerful, not any weaker than Huijiushan and the others. He was even more terrifying than Earth Chief. "Tian Chief greets your highness." That person's face was hidden in the black robe, and his face could not be seen clearly. However, when he landed, he bowed respectfully to Shuer. Tian Chief! Everyone exclaimed. They didn't expect the person to be Tian Chief of the Inescapable Net. The Inescapable Net's Heaven and Earth Chief had appeared at the same time, so the situation had taken a subtle turn. Judging from Tian Chief's aura, his strength should be on par with Huojiushan and the others. The most amazing thing was that Tian Chief and Earth Chief's attitude towards Cher was that of a servant serving her master. Nie Tian's body trembled slightly. He suddenly felt that he couldn't maintain his strength anymore. In the blink of an eye, his body suddenly shrank and turned into a human. At this moment, he was covered in blood and his aura was extremely weak. Only his eyes were as resolute as ever. Tian Chief, how have you been? At this time, Huojiushan took a step forward with a faint smile and took the initiative to speak. Lord President, Earth Chief and I are going to take Her Highness away. Is that all right? Tian Chief replied coldly. His voice was cold and extremely domineering. Huojiushan and Jiang Lai looked at each other and smiled. They said in unison, "Of course it's all right. You can leave now." Cher had the meridians of 3 lives, so she had an extraordinary connection to the Emperor of the Netherworld. However, she clearly wasn't the focus of Huojiushan and Jiang Lai's apprehension right now, so it wasn't a bad idea to let her go. The Inescapable Net could be dealt with in the future, but Nie Tian and Mo Rushi had to die today. No! However, before Huojiushan and Jiang Lai could finish speaking, Cher took a step forward and looked cold at Tian Chief and Earth Chief. She growled, "I won't go with you." Her Highness. Tian Chief frowned and said solemnly, "You've been wandering outside for too long. Please return with me." Cher's beautiful eyes flickered. Her gaze flashed across Nie Tian and Mo Rushi. She said, "If Nie Tian and Sister Rushi don't leave, then I won't leave either." This. Tian Chief and Earth Chief looked at each other with ugly expressions. "You have to save them." Snow took another step forward, speaking in a forceful tone that was rare for her. Huojiushan and Jiang Lai were stunned at the same time. If Tian Chief and Earth Chief really wanted to save them, then it would be troublesome. Tian Chief alone was enough to deal with Huojiushan or Jiang Lai, and Earth Chief was no weaker than Nangong Duxiu. If it was 3 against 3, Huojiushan's side didn't have much chance of winning. "Her Highness, please don't make things difficult for me." Tian Chief bowed slightly and maintained a respectful tone. "I'm not making things difficult for you." Cher's eyes flickered. She actually said in a cold tone, "I'm ordering you." Her voice wasn't loud and even a little gentle, but it resounded in the air with an extremely domineering tone. Cher had the temperament of a ruler. When she turned cold, this temperament became even more obvious. Tian Chief and Earth Chief shuddered at the same time. They didn't expect Cher to say such a thing. The two fell silent for a moment and seemed to exchange opinions. Then, they each took a step forward and stood in front of Nie Tian and Mo Rushi, confronting Huojiushan and the others. "Tian Chief, Earth Chief, what is the meaning of this?" Huojiushan was startled and said solemnly, "Is this how I let you go? Is this how you appreciate my kindness?" Tian Chief's eyes flickered in the darkness, and he said sternly, "Tian Chief has no choice but to obey Her Highness' order." The words, "I have no choice but to comply," showed Tian Kuei's determination to intervene. Chapter 1529. In the sky, Tian Kuei took a step forward and released his aura slightly. A strange power appeared in the void, like dark clouds, surging in the space. "Tian Kuei, you!" Calamity Nine's heart suddenly sank, and the evil energy of Extreme Een circulating around her body immediately became restless. He didn't expect that the heaven and earth duo of the Inescapable Net would actually listen to a little girl. In an instant, the atmosphere became tense. The few peak experts had yet to make a move, but the violent forces in the air had already begun to collide with each other. The violent forces collided with each other, and ear-piercing explosions rang out in the air, as if the heavens and earth were wailing. "Lord Guild Leader, if you wish to fight, Tian Kuei will accompany you." Tian Kuei was not afraid of Huajiushan at all. He took a step forward and leaped into the air with his average-sized body. He was extremely powerful. "Tian Kuei, do you really want to be manipulated by a little girl?" Huajiushan said coldly. His entire body was surging with cold intent, but his eyes were locked onto Mo Rushi and Nye Tian. At this moment, the people he wanted to kill the most were Mo Rushi and Nye Tian, especially Mo Rushi and the child in her womb. The descendants of a godfiend essence embryo and a sage's body were too terrifying. They had to be eliminated. 9 gods of calamity, please watch your words. Tian Kuei's body trembled slightly. He was clearly disgusted by Huajiushan calling Cher a little girl. He said in a deep voice, "I heard that the sacred president possesses the legendary 6th special pupil, the 9 pupils. Tian Kuei really wants to see just how powerful the legendary 9 pupils are." Tian Kuei's words were cold and disdainful, directly provoking him. "Sky Leader, do you really think this guild leader is afraid of you?" Calamity 9 frowned, his expression as dark as water. He naturally knew that Tian Kuei was a super genius who had stepped into the 9th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. It had been several thousand years since he had last seen Tian Kuei, so he didn't know just how strong the latter had become. A person who could step into the 9th level of the glazed demon pagoda was definitely not that simple. As the president of the Holy Parliament, Huajiushan understood the terror of the glazed demon pagoda better than anyone else. Because of this, he was rather wary of Tian Kuei. He would rather face Nye Dao than face Tian Kuei. But now that Tian Kuei was being so forceful, if he retreated, it would be a disgrace to his status as the guild leader of Sacred Light. "Then make your move." Tian Kuei smiled cold and took another step forward in a domineering manner. At this moment, Nye Tian, who was watching the battle from the side, could not help but frown. He felt very strange. 9 Gods Huo was clearly stronger than Jiang Lai, so why would Tian Chief take the initiative to challenge 9 Gods Huo? From the looks of Tian Kuei's intentions, it seemed like he couldn't wait to fight the 9 Gods of Huo. Arrogant! Huajiushan was infuriated by Tian Chief's insolence. She let out a low roar and her eyes flickered slightly. Immediately, a wave of evil energy of extreme Yin was released and condensed into a sharp black blade in the air. It abruptly lashed out, its sharpness filling the world and almost cutting space itself apart. Whoosh! The black blade was extremely sharp, and an ear-piercing sound came from the void. The sharp aura shot tens of thousands of meters away. It was clear that Huajiushan had spared no effort in this attack, hoping to intimidate Tian Kuei and force him to retreat. "Wings of the Sky Demon, open!" Tian Kuei shouted in a low voice in the face of Huajiushan's fatal attack. His body swayed slightly, and 2 black vortexes appeared behind him. They instantly transformed into a pair of black wings that were thousands of meters wide when spread. In the next moment, the wings of the Sky Demon suddenly folded, and a strange vortex condensed. It was like an invincible abyss that surged between heaven and earth, appearing extremely evil. The black blade arrived in an instant and struck the strange vortex. A shocking scene appeared. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a giant black hand stretched out from the strange vortex. It suddenly stretched open and tore through the void, causing an endless space-time storm to surge out. That giant black hand was extremely terrifying. It was not an illusion, but a real entity. It had black bones and black skin, and it emitted a dark aura. The giant black hand was completely unafraid of the space-time storm. It suddenly tightened and crushed the black blade, then swallowed it whole. The other peak experts' eyes narrowed when they saw this scene, and they all gasped in shock. That giant black hand was too terrifying. Just the dark aura that surged around it made people feel suffocated. The giant black hand seemed to represent darkness itself. It was extremely terrifying. This is... Huojiushin retreated rapidly. She was stunned at first, but then she thought of something and cried out in shock. She was speechless. The hand of the Netherworld Emperor. Nie Dao's voice sounded at almost the same time, full of panic. The hand of the Netherworld Emperor? Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He did not know what it was, but judging from the reaction of these peak experts, it was not hard to guess that the hand of the Netherworld Emperor must be something very terrifying. The Netherworld Emperor was a person that many peak experts had mentioned before. It seemed that this person had a special relationship with Cher. But up until now, Nie Tian still did not know who the Netherworld Emperor was. Tian Kuei, no wonder you addressed the girl with the meridian of 3 lives as Her Highness. So you are from the ancient Ming race. Huojiushin calmed down a little and immediately understood something. She roared angrily and looked at Nie Dao at the same time. Nie Dao, Tian Kuei is a remnant of the ancient Ming race. Do you still want to work with him? Nie Dao was slightly stunned, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He took a step forward and said solemnly, I have no choice but to protect my family. The ancient Ming race was an extremely ancient race that had existed even longer than the Dragon Rebel race. The ancient Ming race was a taboo race that had another name in the 9 realms, the heaven-punishing ancient race. Everyone thought that the ancient Ming race had been completely annihilated hundreds of thousands of years ago. Who would have thought that there were still survivors? The ancient Ming race was a taboo race that was viewed as an enemy by all forces. But in order to protect his family, Nie Dao did not hesitate to work with Tian Kuei. At least for now, Tian Kuei had no intention of harming Nie Tian and the others. In fact, he was even protecting Nie Tian. Nie Dao, you must understand that you are making an enemy of the entire world. Huojiushin's body trembled, and a terrifying chill radiated from his body. His violent roar reverberated through the sky. I will do anything for my family. Nie Dao responded cold, but his eyes were filled with the most resolute determination. Nie Tian's heart trembled when he heard Nie Dao's words. He felt extremely proud to have a grandfather like this. Huojiushin, your 9 pupils are only SOSO. At this moment, Tian Kuei's arrogant voice reverberated through the sky. It was extremely ear-piercing. Tian Kuei. A cold light flashed through Huojiushin's dark eyes. He uttered the 2 words, Tian Kuei, and said in a deep voice, What are you trying to do? What benefit does the inescapable net get from opposing the Holy Parliament? Huojiushin's imposing manner had clearly weakened, and there was a hint of compromise in his voice. Tian Kuei could use the hand of the Netherworld Emperor, which was something Huojiushin hadn't expected. The power of the hand of the Netherworld Emperor had exceeded Huojiushin's expectations. If he fought with all his strength and used his stronger trump card, he had a 70% chance of destroying the hand of the Netherworld Emperor, but he would have to pay a certain price. For Huojiushin, this wasn't worth it. Chapter 1530. Huojiushin, are you trying to negotiate with me? Tian Kuei sensed that Huojiushin's aura had weakened and couldn't help but smile playfully. He was a smart person and knew when to stop. Huojiushin had been famous for a long time and could be considered his senior. She definitely had a trump card that ordinary people couldn't imagine, since she could hold the position of the sacred president for hundreds of thousands of years. It wouldn't be good if she was pushed too far. Tian Kuei had used the hand of the Underworld Emperor to gain the upper hand. Now that he had achieved his goal, he could temporarily restrain himself. Tian Kuei, what do you want? Huojiushin said solemnly, tacitly agreeing. Her Highness hopes that Nie Tian and Lady Ru Shi are alive, so I want to protect their lives. Tian Kuei smiled and said directly. Tian Kuei, do you think that's possible? Huojiushin smiled cold and said solemnly, the god-fiend nascent embryo, the body of a sage, and the seed of disaster in the belly of a sage. It's impossible for you to protect all of them. Then let's fight. Before Huijiushan could finish, Nie Dao roared angrily and took a step forward in a threatening manner. Now that the heaven and earth duo were here, he needed to borrow their strength to demonstrate his might to Huijiushan. Tian Kuei Nie Dao. Huijiushan trembled slightly and hesitated. Tian Kuei's strength had exceeded Huijiushan's expectations and turned the situation delicate. President, why are we in such a hurry? Nangong Duxiu suddenly transmitted at this time and said, "We can make a deal with the godfiend Nascent Embryo Kid and have him open the 10th floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda for us." Calamity 9 furrowed her brows slightly, then she squeezed out a cold smile on her dark face. She murmured inwardly, "I almost forgot. The fiend god Nascent Embryo just absorbed a Glazed Demon Pagoda clone and almost entered the 10th floor. It might be a good idea to use his talent to open the 10th floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda." The Glazed Demon Pagoda was the ultimate treasure of the Sacred Parliament. But so far, only the 9th floor of the pagoda had been opened. No one had stepped into the 10th floor and above, so it couldn't be opened. It was rumored that the Glazed Demon Pagoda was an immemorial holy artifact that contained the secret of breaking through the deity realm and advancing to the saint realm. 9 gods Hua had studied the Glazed Demon Pagoda for tens of thousands of years, and his greatest trump card was not the 9 pupils, but the glazed body. Unfortunately, his glazed body was only a half-finished product. Because he could not enter the 10th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, he could not cultivate his glazed body to the perfect state. The reason why the Holy Parliament had chosen so many leaders from the 9 domains was, of course, not to nurture talents, but to use the talents of these geniuses to open the higher levels of the Glazed Demon Pagoda. The connection between the main body of the Glazed Demon Pagoda and the avatar was very tight. As long as a martial artist stepped onto the 10th floor of the avatar, the 10th floor of the main body of the Glazed Demon Pagoda would also open. Huijiushan possessed the Glazed Demon Pagoda's main body, so she naturally didn't care about the Glazed Demon Pagoda's clone. If the Glazed Demon Pagoda can open the 10th floor and I can enter it to cultivate, my glazed body will definitely improve by another level, Huijiushan thought to herself. Her abyss-like body began to sway slightly. As long as the 10th floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda was opened, Huijiushan was confident that his strength would improve by another level, and he might even be able to reach the legendary Sage Realm. As long as he could reach the Sage Realm, would he be afraid of the godfiend Nascent Embryo? Huijiushan was willing to compromise for the chance to reach the Sage Realm. Moreover, the current situation forced him to compromise. Lord President, the Nie family's god confinement fetus has an embryo period of 3 years, while the godfiend Nascent Embryo has an embryo period of 9 years. Based on this, the child of the godfiend Nascent Embryo and the Sage Physique will definitely have an embryo period of more than 10 years. At this time, Nangong Duxiu's voice sounded again. She said sinisterly, "Even if this girl is allowed to live, it will take at least 10 years for the child in her womb to be born. During this period of time, we can still take action. Normally, humans would gestate for 10 months, but some special innate embryos would have a very long embryo period. The god confinement fetus had 3 years, while the godfiend Nascent Embryo had 9 years. If the child of Nye Tian and Emo Rushi was born, the embryo period would probably be even longer, at least 10 years. 10 years was enough to change many things." Huijiushan nodded solemnly. He had already made his decision. "Tian Chief, Nie Dao," Huijiushan said in a cold voice, "the meridian of 3 lives, the godfiend Nascent Embryo, and the Sage Physique. I can let these 3 live, but the child in the womb of the Sage Physique must die." "Impossible!" Before Huijiushan could finish speaking, Nye Tian roared furiously, "That is my child. What right do you have to decide his life or death?" "Huijiushan, that child is of the Nye family's bloodline. Even if I, Nye Dao, die, I will not let you harm a hair on him." Nye Dao's furious and firm voice resounded. What right do I have? Huijiushin smiled coldly. Then, he looked at Nye Tian with cold eyes and said solemnly, Do you know that the godfiend nascent embryo in your body is already a taboo? The child born from the godfiend nascent embryo and the sage physique is the taboo of all taboo? Whether this child has the right to live or not is not something you can decide. Taboo? Nye Tian had an angry expression as he growled, Why is it a taboo? Who made this rule? The child in Mo Rushi's womb was Nye Tian's flesh and blood. How could he allow someone else to decide his child's life or death just because of a taboo? Although Nye Tian wasn't ready to become a father yet, since this child had appeared, he would fulfill his responsibility as a father. He would use his life to protect Mo Rushi, to protect his child. Why is it a taboo? Huijiushin smiled cold and then said solemnly, Because he is too powerful. This world cannot contain him. Bullshit! Nye Tian roared furiously. A person who was too powerful had to be killed. How could there be such a logic in this world? Huijiushin, Nye Dao, will not take a step back no matter what. If you want to kill this child, you will have to step over my dead body first. Nye Dao's expression was furious. He took a step forward and released his aura wildly. Nye Dao. At this moment, Huijiushin suddenly shouted. Her ethereal voice suddenly became louder. Do you really want to protect this child? I must. Nye Dao replied solemnly. Nye Tian's eyes flickered. He could see that Huijiushin was about to compromise and negotiate. The kid called Nye Tian. Suddenly, Huijiushin turned around and locked her cold gaze on Nye Tian. She said solemnly, If you want to protect your own child, I will give you a chance. Boom. Huijiushin waved her hand as soon as she finished speaking. A ball of glazed light surged out and instantly condensed into a tower of light. It was the glazed demon pagoda. The glazed demon pagoda. Nye Tian's brows sank and his eyes flickered. He didn't know why Huijiushin had released the glazed demon pagoda at this time. The others were also stunned. They didn't understand what Huijiushin meant. At this moment, Huijiushin had released an avatar of the glazed demon pagoda and not the main body. As long as Nye Tian could reach the 10th floor, the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda would open. Nye Tian, kid, you've already entered the glazed demon pagoda. Huijiushin let out a strange laugh and said in a low voice, I will give you a chance. As long as you can reach the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda and above, the child in the womb of the sage body can survive. The 12th floor. Everyone was stunned at first when they heard Huijiushin's words. Then, they exclaimed in unison with expressions of disbelief. Chapter 1531. The 12th floor. Everyone's expression turned sluggish as soon as Huijiushin finished speaking. They all wore expressions of disbelief. No one had expected Huijiushin to propose such harsh conditions. Countless geniuses had entered the glazed demon pagoda over the past hundreds of thousands of years, but the 9th floor was the limit. No one had ever entered the 10th floor until now. Even someone as brilliant as Nie Fenghua, Tian Kuei, ultimately stopped at the 9th floor. Even Mo Rushi, who was known as the #1 martial physique in all of history, felt the pressure of the martial physique's limits when she entered the 9th floor. Above the 12th floor was an impossible condition. Nangong Duxia was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. She only wanted Nye Tian to attempt the 10th floor, but she didn't expect Huijiushin to be so greedy and ask for above the 12th floor. Tian Kuei's figure also clearly stiffened. He had entered the glazed demon pagoda before and naturally knew how terrifying it was. The 9th floor was the limit, and it was almost impossible to enter the 10th floor and beyond. Huijiushin, do you think this is an opportunity? Nye Dao finally reacted. His aged face was filled with extreme anger as he growled, The highest record of the glazed demon pagoda is the 9th floor, and you want above the 12th floor. You are clearly deliberately making things difficult for me. I don't want such an opportunity. So what if I'm deliberately making things difficult for you? Huijiushan smiled cold and said loudly, the person you want to protect is a taboo among taboo. I'm only letting him enter the 12th floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda. This is already the greatest concession I can make. Concession? At this time, Tian Kuei suddenly sneered and said solemnly, Huijiushan, don't treat everyone as fools. I know exactly what you want to do. You just want to use Nie Tian's talent to open a higher floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda for you. Tian Kuei's words pointed out Huijiushan's goal. The latter couldn't help but be surprised, but she soon calmed down and said solemnly, How do you know? Don't forget that I once entered the Glazed Demon Pagoda and even saw the Glazed Demon Pagoda's artifact spirit. Tian Kuei smiled coldly and said, If I'm not wrong, your 9 revolution glass art has reached a bottleneck. You want to use Nie Tian to open the 10th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, and then enter the 10th level to cultivate and absorb the pure glaze chi to help you break through the bottleneck of the 9 revolution glaze technique. This is your plan, right? Tian Kuei bluntly stated 9 gods was thought. Huijiushan's abyss-like body trembled slightly. Her 9 eyes were like a wolf's, ready to erupt with terrifying power at any moment. So what if I am? It was easy to imagine how furious 9 Gods' calamity was after his scheme was exposed in front of everyone, but he suppressed his anger and said solemnly, Tian Kuei, since you know that I cultivate the 9 revolution glass technique, then you should also know that a mere hand of the Netherworld Emperor cannot stop me. Huijiushan's body shuddered as soon as he heard Zhang Jiushan's violent voice. His entire body unleashed boundless glass energy, which condensed into a gigantic glass body that was tens of thousands of meters long behind him. It unleashed a tremendous amount of power. The glaze body disappeared in a flash, clearly just to intimidate. Huijiushan sneered and said indifferently, To put it bluntly, if I use my glaze body, the 3 of you will definitely hate me even if you work together. 9 Gods' calamity, you. Nie Dao's old face suddenly darkened. He didn't expect 9 Gods' calamity to have such a powerful trump card. The heaven and earth duo Kuei exchanged glances, their auras clearly weakening a little. At this moment, Nie Tian couldn't help but frown. Although the glaze body had only appeared for an instant, its aura had shocked him. Nie Dao's god restraining fetus and Tian Kuei's hand of the Netherworld Emperor were indeed weaker than the glaze body. 9 Gods' calamity. At this time, Tian Kuei suddenly sneered and said, If you use the glaze body, I'm afraid you'll also suffer a great backlash. So what if I do? 9 Gods' calamity didn't hide it at all and said in a cold voice, If I use the glaze body, I'll suffer a bit of backlash at most. At worst, I'll just go into seclusion for a few hundred years and recover after that. But you'll have to pay with your lives. The 9 revolution glaze technique did have a very strong backlash on a cultivator's martial body. Only after cultivating it to the 5th revolution and above would the backlash of the glaze body disappear. Unfortunately, 9 Gods' calamity was stuck at the 4th revolution of the 9 revolution glaze technique and had to endure the backlash of the glaze body every day. If he used the glaze body, the backlash would increase and might even damage his martial Dao foundation. This was also why he never used the glaze body. Only by entering the 10th level of the glaze pagoda could he break through the bottleneck of the 9 revolution glaze technique. Jiang Lai's eyes couldn't help but flicker as he listened to their conversation. Of course he wanted to see 9 Gods' calamity and Tian Kuei fight. When that happened, both sides would definitely suffer and he would be able to reap the benefit. However, both sides were relatively calm and obviously wouldn't act rashly. 9 Gods' calamity, you're so treacherous. Nie Dao's expression was dark as he said sternly, So you want to use the Fiend God Origin Embryo to open the Glaze Pagoda for you. This way, your strength will definitely increase, and you might even have a chance to break through to the Sage Realm. When you're strong enough, will you still be able to tolerate the Wind and Rain Alliance? Humph humph. Nine Gods Calamity smiled sinisterly and said in a deep voice, "Nye Dao, you're not that stupid after all. But so what if you know the truth? Do you still have a choice?" Her cold voice resounded through the air, and exploded in the ears of Nye Tian and the others like a clap of thunder. Nine Gods Calamity was right. Nye Tian and the others had no other choice. Nye Tian's expression was as dark as still water. His gaze swept across Mo Rushi, Cher, Nye Dao, and the others, and his eyes gradually became determined. Nye Dao had already done too much for him. He couldn't let the former risk his life for him. Nye Tian knew that if a battle really broke out, Nye Dao would most likely die. Even the heaven and earth duo would not be spared. The price Nine Gods Calamity had to pay was just to cultivate in seclusion, which was relatively small. The final winner would be another force, the Xingtian Alliance. Nye Tian wasn't willing to see this happen. He had to agree to Nine Gods Calamity's conditions. Nine Gods Calamity, I agree. Nye Tian took a step forward as soon as he thought of this. His eyes were sharp and firm. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's gazes locked onto Nye Tian, astonishment and shock filling their faces. The 12th floor of the Glazed Pagoda. Nye Tian had really agreed. Nye Tian, you can't agree. Nye Dao took a step forward and shouted in shock. Mo Rushi and Cher's little faces froze. They didn't know what to say. Grandfather, believe me. Nye Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at Nye Dao. His eyes were calm and firm, containing an almost tyrannical confidence. Grandfather. Nye Dao's heart trembled when he heard this form of address. If Nye Tian was willing to recognize him as his grandfather, then everything he had done before was worth it. Nye Tian, have you thought it through? At this moment, Nine Gods Calamity smiled sinisterly and looked very playful. That was the 12th floor of the Glazed Pagoda. Even if Nye Tian had the fiend god origin embryo, he couldn't enter it. Nye Tian let out a long breath and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Yes, I have. He had entered the Glazed Pagoda before, so he naturally knew how strange it was. Chapter 1532. High up in the sky above Mu City, the glazed demon pagoda floated and constantly emitted glazed halos. The halos filled the space within a radius of several thousand meters and flowed with a mysterious aura. At this moment, no one's eyes were on the glazed demon pagoda. Instead, they were locked onto Nye Tian. Nye Tian sat cross-legged in midair. After a while, he stood up. The bloodstains on his body had completely disappeared and his aura had returned to normal. However, his face was still slightly pale. The dragon form he had just used in a fit of rage had caused him to consume a massive amount of his devil essence. At the same time, his blood chi had also been severely damaged. What a terrifying recovery ability! The others' eyes flickered when they saw Nye Tian stand up. Previously, Nye Tian's chi and blood were almost exhausted. However, he had recovered in less than half an hour. The strength of his martial body was truly terrifying. This kid is too terrifying. Apart from his fiend god nascent embryo, he also has a powerful dragon vein and has even fused with the twin sovereign flames. What's even stranger is that there's a very stable power flowing through his body. This power seems to be even more terrifying than the glazed energy. Nine Gods' cold gaze roamed over Nye Tian. The killing intent in her eyes intensified as she said in a cold voice, "This kid is too terrifying. We can't let him grow." At this moment, Nine Gods had made up her mind to kill Nye Tian. Nye Tian was too terrifying. He was only a low god at the moment, but Nine Gods already felt apprehensive. Once he grew to the level of a paramount god, he might not have to fear Nine Gods. Can we begin? Nye Tian's gaze was as sharp as a sword as he spoke indifferently. Of course. Nine Gods hinted that Nye Tian could enter the glazed demon pagoda. Grandfather, sixth uncle, Ru Shi, Cher, Lord Sky Chief, Lord Earth Chief. Nie Tian nodded slightly and swept his gaze across the others. He greeted them one by one and said, "I'm going in." The others nodded solemnly, but their expressions were extremely grave. The 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda was an impossible mission. "Kid, you only need to reach the 10th floor. As for the conditions that you haven't fulfilled, we can discuss other conditions. Not only do I want to open the glazed demon pagoda, but I also want the Wind and Cloud Alliance to pay a heavy price. I want them to leave the realms and be exiled to other planes." Huojiushen's eyes flashed as she thought coldly. As long as Nie Tian could enter the 10th floor, he would be very satisfied. But if Nie Tian couldn't fulfill the conditions, 9 deities Huo could raise other conditions. He had already made up his mind. He was going to chase the Wind and Cloud Alliance out of the realm and banish them to the plane world. Even if the 9 gods of calamity did nothing, the Wind and Cloud Alliance that had sunk into the plane world would fall into complete decline in less than 100 years. For martial practitioners, planar worlds and realms were completely different cultivation environments. How could they be mentioned in the same breath? Nie Tian did not know what Huojiushen was thinking, but he knew that he had to reach the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. In the next moment, Nie Tian no longer hesitated. His figure moved and turned into a stream of light, entering the glazed demon pagoda directly. Once again entering the glazed demon pagoda and feeling the dense glazed qi, Nie Tian was not excited at all. Instead, he felt immense grief and indignation. He had too many things on his shoulders. This time, he absolutely could not fail. At this moment, everyone was staring at the dot of light in the glazed demon pagoda with burning eyes. Even though Nie Dao and the others felt that Nie Tian had no chance of entering the 12th floor, they still held on to a great hope in their hearts. Emo Rushi's eyes flickered and her beautiful eyes trembled. Her crystalline tears reflected the glazed demon pagoda, making her entire being look beautiful and pitiful. "Sister Rushi, I believe that Nie Tian will definitely succeed." Cher gently grabbed Emo Rushi's hand and said indifferently. Her beautiful eyes were clear and firm. She had always had confidence in Nie Tian, no matter the situation. Under countless gazes, the dot of light in the glazed demon pagoda rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached the 6th floor. Entering the 6th floor, Nie Tian maintained a very fast speed. What terrifying speed! Tian Kuei's eyes trembled. This was the fastest speed he had ever seen. It far surpassed his previous speed. At this moment, he realized that Nie Tian's talent was even more terrifying than he had imagined. When Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu saw Nie Tian's speed, the hope in their hearts gradually grew. "Godfiend nascent embryo brat, faster, faster. You will definitely open the glazed demon pagoda for this president." Huojiushen's pitch-black eyes flickered with a strange light. He could not help but become excited. Inside the glazed demon pagoda, Nie Tian's figure continued to madly rush upwards. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to keep rushing forward. At this moment, Nie Tian seemed to have forgotten everything. He recklessly rushed upwards. His body was almost numb. He could not feel the surging of the glazed qi, nor could he feel the enormous pressure of the glazed demon pagoda. After a short while, Nie Tian suddenly felt an abnormally powerful force pressing down on him from above. His body froze abruptly. He was actually unable to withstand this force and was forced to take a few steps back. Nie Tian. Outside the demon pagoda, Emo Rushi saw Nie Tian suddenly move downwards and could not help but exclaim, "So powerful!" At the same time, Tian Kuei and the others exclaimed in shock. Their eyes became slightly dull. Just now, Nie Tian had actually climbed to the 9th floor in one go. At this moment, he was already standing at the edge of the 10th floor and was rushing towards it. The terror of Nie Tian had exceeded the expectations of all the peak experts. Back then, Tian Kuei had spent half a day to barely enter the 9th floor, but Nye Tian had rushed to the 9th floor in just a few minutes. This was really too terrifying. Nye Tian, the 9th floor is guarded by an artifact spirit. Can you rush over? Tian Kuei's eyes narrowed, and his voice was trembling in his heart. Back then, he had encountered the artifact spirit of the glazed demon pagoda on the 9th floor. This was a very terrifying guy. At this moment, the light spot in the glazed demon pagoda kept rushing upwards, but was constantly knocked back. Again and again, the light spot did not seem to know fatigue. It did not stop, and it did not give up. Nye Tian. Mo Rushi looked at the light spot moving up and down, and the surging tears in her eyes slowly flowed down. At this moment, this blurry image was forever imprinted in Mo Rushi's heart and could never be erased. After an unknown period of time, no one knew how many times Nye Tian had failed, but he kept rushing with all his might and showed no signs of stopping. This kid's perseverance is really terrifying. Huijiushan looked at the light spot and felt a deep fear in his heart. If his face was revealed, he would definitely be extremely embarrassed, even if he had a skeletal face. Nye Tian's talent is already a top-notch monster, and his perseverance is even more astonishing. Tian Kuei's expression was also extremely shocked, and he said in a heavy heart, "This person will definitely stand at the peak of the martial path in the future." Talent and perseverance were the two biggest factors that determined a martial artist's success. Nye Tian's talent and perseverance were monstrous among monstrous geniuses. It would be unreasonable if such a person did not succeed. He stopped. At this moment, Nangong Duxiu suddenly let out an abnormally ear-piercing cry. Chapter 1533. Outside the glazed demon pagoda, everyone saw that the light spot in the pagoda suddenly stopped. They couldn't help but be stunned, and their eyes became puzzled. With Nye Tian's perseverance, he absolutely wouldn't stop unless something else happened in the pagoda. At the same time, in the glazed demon pagoda. This is... Nye Tian's figure stopped, and he looked at the strange face in front of him. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. At this moment, Nye Tian's body was already a bloody mess, and his bones could be seen from many wounds. He forcefully rushed to the 10th level, and the pressure in the glazed demon pagoda became stronger and stronger, almost tearing his body apart. But Nye Tian didn't give up at all, because he could only exchange his life for the life of his loved ones by fighting with his life. Nye Tian felt that there was an invisible barrier in the space leading to the 10th level. It was extremely strange, and no matter what attack he used, it was completely ineffective. The invisible barrier seemed to be able to absorb all power, and it couldn't be broken. However, just a moment ago, the invisible barrier suddenly trembled, and a stream of liquefied, glassy energy appeared, condensing into a bizarre face in front of Nye Tian. This face was only the size of a baby's palm. It was 30% human and 70% cat. It didn't look fierce at all, and it was actually very cute. A pair of sapphire-like eyes flickered, and it was quick-witted and quick-witted. Nye Tian looked at the face in front of him, and he was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. "Little doll, are you done?" Suddenly, the kitten actually spoke. Its voice was a little sharp, and it was also a voice between a human and a cat. It was very strange. You are." Nye Tian was stunned on the spot, and his mouth was wide open, but he couldn't speak. "You don't know me?" The kitten made a strange sound and seemed very surprised. Then, he put on a very arrogant face and said loudly, "I am the 9th device spirit of the glazed demon pagoda, Lord Nine-Tailed Chinchilla." The 9th device spirit? Nine-Tailed Chinchilla? Nye Tian was stunned, and his expression was even more astonished. This kitten was the 9th artifact spirit. Could it be that the glazed demon pagoda had many other artifact spirits? Nye Tian had heard of artifact spirits before. However, it was strange for a sacred artifact to have so many artifact spirit. "Little doll, give up. The 9th level of the glazed demon pagoda is already the limit of a martial artist's talent. You can't enter the 10th level. At this time, the nine-tailed demon cat suddenly extended a fat paw and waved its hand, signaling Nye Tian to leave. As he spoke, the nine-tailed chinchilla's entire body was revealed. Its small body was not big, but it was very fat. It looked like a meatball. Its long tail dragged in the air, and it was several times longer than its body. The body of this strange cat was like the Jean de Bao of the cat world. Nye Tian glanced at the fat cat and was puzzled. This little guy clearly only had one tail, yet it insisted on calling itself nine-tailed chinchilla. It was really strange. Moreover, the fat cat was no different from an ordinary kitten. It was not related to a dragon at all. The only strange thing was that its face looked a little like a human. Why? Following that, Nye Tian became cold and said solemnly, I must enter the 10th level. According to the fat cat, the 9th level of the glazed demon pagoda was the limit. Then, why did it have to be designed as 18 levels? It should have been designed as 9 levels. There must be a huge secret hidden above the 10th level. Must you enter? Nine-tailed chinchilla let out a strange cry. Its paw held its chin, and it was in deep thought. After pondering for a long time, it said, Little doll, you attacked me 763 times just now. Why don't you attack me 763 times again? Maybe I will consider letting you pass. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he said in astonishment, That invisible barrier just now was formed by you. Of course. Nine-tailed chinchilla chuckled. Its body moved, and it circled around Nye Tian. Suddenly, it landed on his shoulder and said, Little doll, your current martial body has reached its limit. If you attack it 763 times again, I'm afraid you will die in the glazed demon pagoda. For a warrior with such talent and perseverance like you to die in the demon pagoda, I'm really a little reluctant. Is that so? Suddenly, Nye Tianlung laughed, and then a sword intent gushed out from his palm, turning into a sword net, directly imprisoning nine-tailed chinchilla. Since the barrier just now was formed by nine-tailed chinchilla, as long as he controlled it, wouldn't he be able to enter the 10th level? In the next moment, Nye Tian's figure moved, and he directly rushed to the 10th level. Bang! Immediately, a muffled sound was heard, and Nye Tian was knocked back again. Little doll, you're too young. Nine-tailed chinchilla's figure appeared again, and the sword net didn't imprison him at all. Nine-tailed chinchilla chuckled and said, Playing tricks in front of me, childish. Nine-tailed chinchilla, what do you want? Nye Tian's eyes were gloomy and he said cold, What do I have to do for you to let me enter the 10th level? Why do you want to enter the 10th level? Nine-tailed chinchilla's face became serious, but it asked, Little doll, why do you want to enter the 10th level? Nye Tian thought for a moment, and without hiding anything, he explained the matter. So that's how it is. Nine-tailed chinchilla lay on Nye Tian's shoulder and actually sobbed, and said with a trembling voice, You're desperate for your wife and child. It's really touching. Nye Tian was speechless. He didn't know if the fat cat was really touched, or if it was acting for fun. He didn't know that the fat cat was so emotional. Nye Tian, if you want to enter the 10th level or even higher, it's actually very simple. Before Nye Tian could react, Nine-tailed chinchilla suddenly stopped crying and actually laughed and said, As long as you can bring me out of here, I will let you enter the 10th level, and I can even bring you to higher levels. Bring you out of here? Nye Tian was stunned, and he didn't quite understand. Yes. Nine-tailed demon cat chuckled and said, Nye Tian, you are a person with a god-fiend origin embryo. As long as I enter your origin embryo space, I can escape the senses of the original body, and escape the control of the original body. Nye Tian was stunned again. Nine-tailed demon cat was both the original body and the original body, which made him even more confused. Sigh. Nine-tailed chinchilla suddenly sighed and actually squeezed out another tear and said, Actually, I cry more than you, I was originally. Get to the point. Not waiting for Nine-Tailed Chinchilla to continue, Nye Tian directly interrupted him. He could already see that this fat cat not only had a similar body shape to Jean de Bayo, but also had a similar personality. They both liked to talk. If he continued to talk, he didn't know how long he would be talking for. Alright, then I will get to the point. Nine-Tailed Chinchilla stopped crying, chuckled, and said, I am the 9th clone of Nine-Tailed Chinchilla, but I don't want to be a clone anymore. I want to leave the Glaze Pagoda and explore the outside world. Only then will I not waste my supreme talent. Nye Tian frowned and finally understood. It turned out that this fat cat wasn't Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's original body, but it was just a clone. However, because this clone had left the original body for too long, it gradually developed its own consciousness, and actually wanted to leave the original body and become an independent existence. Needless to say, this fat cat was quite a dreamer. Fat cat, you are betraying your original body. How can I believe your words? Nye Tian thought for a while and said indifferently. Chapter 1534. In the Glaze Demon Pagoda, the 10th floor suddenly became bright. Endless glaze halo gushed out and wrapped around Nye Tian tightly. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian felt streams of mysterious energy flowing into his body, making him feel extremely comfortable. In the blink of an eye, his body that had reached its limit recovered and returned to its peak state. The sudden scene stunned Nye Tian. He was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. The glaze halo that he felt now was similar to the glaze chi from before, but it was purer, like the most original power, allowing his exhausted body to recover instantly. Nye Tian, I will let you feel the benefits of the 10th floor first. If you want to enter, leave a soul imprint on me first. Nine-Tailed Chinchilla grinned. His fat ball-like body was very agile. He circled around Nye Tian and stared at Nye Tian with a face full of expectation. It seemed that this guy was really tired of staying in the Glaze Demon Pagoda and couldn't wait to leave. If Nye Tian left a soul imprint on him, it would be equivalent to signing a soul contract with Nye Tian, which meant that he would become Nye Tian's pet. As long as Nine-Tailed Chinchilla made any strange moves, Nye Tian could kill him directly with a thought. Nye Tian's lips curled up slightly and he said in his heart, This fat cat took the initiative to ask me to leave a soul imprint. I didn't force it. Then, with a thought, a wave of soul power gushed out and entered Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's body. It's done. Nine-Tailed Chinchilla immediately sensed it and smiled excitedly. His long tail circled in the air and entered the space of Nye Tian's embryo. Ha ha! Nine-Tailed Chinchilla laughed excitedly after entering the inner space of the celestial demon embryo. He was so excited that he rolled in the air and shouted happily, This is the inner space of the celestial demon embryo. Even the main body can't enter. I am finally going to leave the Glaze Demon Pagoda. The celestial demon embryo was the first ancient taboo. Its inner space was very secretive. Even Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's main body couldn't enter. If Fat Cat entered the soul space of other warriors, Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's main body could instantly pull him out. Fat Cat, I can enter the 10th floor now, right? Nye Tian didn't give Fat Cat too much time to be happy and said directly, Little kid, I am the noblest Nine-Tailed Chinchilla in the world, not Fat Cat. Little Fat Cat pouted and muttered, Seeing that you brought me out of the Glaze Demon Pagoda, I won't argue with you for now. You can enter the 10th floor now, but you have to be quick. If Lord Mainbody found out that someone had entered the 10th level, he would definitely go crazy with anger. I don't know what will happen then. Alright. Nye Tian nodded solemnly. He looked at the higher part of the Glaze Demon Pagoda and took a deep breath to relax himself. Of course, Nye Tian knew that he was currently in a clone of the Glaze Demon Pagoda. He wasn't sure if there were other artifact spirits after the 10th level. However, he speculated that even if there were other artifact spirits, they would probably be other clones of Nine-Tailed Chinchilla. Since he could deal with Fat Cat's doppelganger, He should be able to deal with the other doppelgangers. However, he wasn't sure if the nine-tailed chinchilla's true form would appear. Nye Tian, don't be afraid. I haven't seen my main body for hundreds of thousands of years. That fat cat is probably asleep. By the time he notices, you will have almost reached the top. Fat Cat chuckled and said with a relaxed expression, as long as you reach the top, take the heart of glaze and give it to me, then I will be the main body. Then, the two of us will join forces and conquer the 9 realms. We will become the legendary supreme martial artists. Only then will I not be wasting my supreme talent. Ha ha. Nye Tian was speechless. He had to say that Fat Cat was thinking too far ahead. She was too optimistic. Whoosh! Nye Tian let out a long breath of turbid air. Without any hesitation, he blurred into action and dashed towards the sky. This time, there were no more barriers to stop him, and he easily entered the 10th floor. In the blink of an eye, he was enveloped by an intense, glassy aura. Nye Tian felt that every bone, every inch of muscle, and every drop of blood in his body was filled with glassy aura. Boom! At this moment, the surging blood chi in his body suddenly bloomed with a powerful aura. It was extremely sharp and rushed into the space. Nye Tian was stunned for a second, then he realized something and exclaimed, I've leveled up! That's right. The moment Nye Tian entered the 10th level, his martial body was crazily attacked by the glaze energy. His strength had advanced from the peak of lower deity to the early stage of middle deity. Previously, when he came out of the glaze demon pagoda for the first time, there were faint signs of him advancing to middle deity. Now that he was attacked by the glaze energy again, it was not strange that his strength advanced. However, his speed of advancement was too terrifying. In a day, he advanced 2 small realms and even broke through the bottleneck of lower deity to middle deity. It was so terrifying that it made people's hair stand on end. Ordinary martial artists usually needed thousands or even tens of thousands of years to advance 2 small realms in the God realm. What's more, many people were unable to break through the bottleneck of lower deity to middle deity in their entire lives. And these things that required tens of thousands of years were accomplished by Nye Tian in a day. This kind of speed was shocking to the world. At the same time, outside the glazed demon pagoda, everyone had been waiting impatiently, but when the dot of light rushed to the 10th level, everyone's eyes immediately burned with passion. Unbelievable! Nye Tian had actually stepped into the 10th level. Nye Tian has obtained the approval of the glazed demon pagoda's artifact spirit? Tian Chief's brows furrowed tightly, his eyes twitching violently. He had once seen the artifact spirit of the glazed demon pagoda, but unfortunately, he did not have the opportunity to set foot on the 10th level. The 10th level, he really reached the 10th level. At this moment, Huijiushan was so excited that he couldn't help but exclaim. It was as if he had gone mad. Nye Tian entering the 10th level would open the glazed demon pagoda's 10th level. This also meant that Huijiushan could enter the 10th level of the glazed demon pagoda's main body. His 9 revolution glaze technique would be able to break through the bottleneck. How could he not be excited? In the next moment, Huijiushan instantly calmed down and sensed that the 10th level of the glazed demon pagoda's main body had indeed opened. Bastard! However, it was also at this moment that a furious voice rang out in Huijiushan's mind, causing him to exclaim, 9-tailed chinchilla. This voice was very familiar to Huijiushan. It was the artifact spirit of the glazed demon pagoda, 9-tailed chinchilla. At this moment, as 9-tailed chinchilla's main body appeared, the glazed demon pagoda's main body also directly descended upon the clone and instantly replaced it. At this moment, Nye Tian was no longer in the glazed demon pagoda's main body, but in the main body. Meanwhile, inside the glazed demon pagoda, Nye Tian, hurry up and rush up. Lord Main Body has sensed it. Just as Nye Tian was feeling extremely excited, Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang out. It sounded extremely nervous. Chapter 1535. Boom! From within the glazed pagoda, endless streams of glazed chi rolled out in an incomparably violent manner, unleashing a terrifying killing intent as they charged towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He saw that the big fat cat that appeared on the higher floors had 9 long tails behind it. 9-tailed chinchilla. Nie Tian's heart sank as he exclaimed. It turned out that fat cat was indeed a 9-tailed chinchilla. However, he was too weak, so he only had 1 tail. Nie Tian, run. You're not a match for Lord Main Body. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice trembled as he screamed. The 9-tailed chinchilla's main body was very strong. It was not something that Nie Tian could deal with. The 10th floor and above was the forbidden area of the glazed demon pagoda. No one was allowed to enter. No way. Nie Tian suddenly came to his senses. He let out a furious roar as star soul wings appeared on his back. With a flap of his wings, he shot upwards. He was currently on the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. His lowest goal was the 12th floor. Therefore, he had no choice but to rush forward. You're courting death. The 9-tailed dragon cat let out a wild roar, and the glazed aura turned into a sharp blade that lunged at Nie Tian. Watch out! Fat Cat screamed, his voice hoarse. Nie Tian was not afraid at all. He activated the Astral Soul Armor and Astral Soul Shield at the same time. His entire body was like an arrow released from a bow, soaring into the sky. What a fast speed! Outside the glazed demon pagoda, the crowd could not help but exclaim when they saw the light rushing towards the higher floors of the glazed demon pagoda. Their eyes burned with passion. Under everyone's gaze, the light rushed towards the 11th floor without any hesitation. Is this kid crazy? Hua Ix's consciousness was connected to the glazed demon pagoda's main body. Of course, he knew what was happening in the glazed demon pagoda. He did not expect that Nie Tian would dare to go head-on with 9-tailed chinchilla. Hua Jiushan was the glazed demon pagoda's blood drop master, but he was very careful when dealing with 9-tailed chinchilla. He didn't dare to be the slightest bit arrogant. Inside the glazed demon pagoda, 9 gods Hua did not dare to fight 9-tailed chinchilla head-on. Nie Tian's reckless dash at this moment was simply seeking his own death. At the same time, in the glazed demon pagoda, something's not right. At this moment, just as the 9-tailed chinchilla's fatal blow was about to land on Nie Tian, the latter suddenly discovered something. With a strange cry, the aura on his body instantly dispersed. The sudden scene made Nie Tian stunned and confused. He did not know why the 9-tailed chinchilla suddenly stopped. Old 9, you bastard! You've attracted big trouble. 9-tailed chinchilla howled furiously, but he did not dare to attack Nie Tian. He suddenly realized that Nie Tian's body contained many terrifying powers. The Godfiend Origin Embryo, the Supreme Dragon Vein, the Supreme Twin Flames, and even the Origin Starstone. These were all incomparably terrifying powers. If Nie Tian was killed, the powers hidden in his body would explode and dissipate in the glazed demon pagoda. The 9-tailed dragon cat was confident that he could instantly take control of the fiend god nascent embryo, the Supreme Dragon Bloodline, the Twin Supreme Flames, and the Origin Star Stones. However, what he was afraid of was Nie Tian's demon essence. Devil essence was an extremely dark power that was very difficult to destroy. If the dark evil energy within the devil essence was released, it would cause irreparable damage to the glazed demon pagoda and might even destroy the glazed demon pagoda in the end. Although the probability of this was not high, only 10% at most. But 9-tailed chinchilla was not willing to take the risk, because once the glazed demon pagoda was destroyed, he would have nowhere to hide and would eventually turn into a soul and dissipate. Moreover, the glazed demon pagoda had another reason to exist, and no accidents were allowed to happen. Little brat who doesn't know life from death, stop for me. At this moment, 9-tailed chinchilla growled, and then his fat claws slashed across the air, and a glazed barrier appeared. Nietian felt the barrier appear, and his rushing figure paused for a moment before he stopped. At this moment, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, because he had reached the 12th floor. Nine-tailed Chinchilla's move was timely, otherwise, Nietian would have entered a higher floor. Nietian let out a long breath. After entering the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda, there was no pressure at all, and he was surrounded by the purest glazed chi, which was very comfortable. Lord Body actually didn't kill you? Fat Cat let out a strange cry, extremely shocked. He knew that Nine-tailed Chinchilla's true form was very cruel, and he would not show any mercy to those who entered the glazed forbidden area. What was wrong with him today? He actually didn't kill Nietian. Old Nine, you dare to betray me, prepare to die. At this moment, Nine-tailed Chinchilla's voice sounded, but the next moment, he discovered something abnormal, and he roared, Old Nine, you bastard, you actually hid in the godfiend origin embryo space. Lord Body, if I didn't hide well, how would I dare to let him enter the 10th floor? Fat Cat laughed. Hiding in the godfiend origin embryo, even Nine-tailed Chinchilla's true form couldn't do anything to him. Bastard! 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 Nine-tailed Chinchilla was furious, but there was nothing he could do. Nietian wasn't interested in the emotions of the two cats. His divine senses explored the surrounding space, and he couldn't help but frown. In his opinion, other than the glazed chi being richer here, there was no difference from the 9th floor below. Why was it the forbidden area of the glazed demon pagoda? Since it was a forbidden area, there would definitely be secrets, but Nietian didn't see any secrets. Nietian, stop looking. You aren't from the glazed clan, so you won't be able to see anything. The glazed wonder of the glazed forbidden area can only be opened by the glazed clan. You won't be able to find it. Fat Cat guessed what Nietian was thinking and said with a smile. Glazed clan? Glazed wonder? Nietian was stunned, and he had no idea what Fat Cat was talking about. He didn't think too much about it. Anyway, he had already entered the 12th floor, and that was enough. Fat Cat, I'm going to leave the glazed demon pagoda now. Are you sure you want to leave with me? Nietian glanced around, frowned, and said solemnly. Of course. Fat Cat screamed nervously and said, If you leave me here, I will be skinned alive by Lord Body. Okay. Nietian nodded slightly and prepared to leave. Although the glazed chi here was very rich, he didn't intend to stay. He didn't know why Nine-tailed Chinchilla didn't kill him, so it was better to leave immediately. Wait a minute. Just as Nietian was about to turn around and leave, little Fat Cat chuckled and made a strange hand seal with its two chubby paws. A strange vortex formed around it. Then, a strange scene appeared. The glazed chi in the surrounding space began to rush madly into Nietian's body, directly into the origin embryo space, and gathered in the vortex between Fat Cat's paws. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. It was very strange, and he didn't know what Fat Cat was doing. After a while, the vortex between Fat Cat's paws turned into a crystal ball of light, like a crystal ball, crystal clear. What is this? Nietian felt the aura of the glazed chi in the crystal ball of light, and his eyes suddenly trembled, and he cried out in surprise. Glazed crystal. Little Fat Cat chuckled and said, Little kid, this yuan crystal is a good thing. Take it as a small gift from me. Chapter 1536. What a pure glazed chi. In the glazed demon pagoda, Nietian felt the glazed chi released by the glazed crystal. He couldn't help but frown and cry out in surprise. Under the effect of the glazed crystal, Nietian felt the aura of the godfiend nascent embryo weaken again. At the same time, it was slowly undergoing a strange change. Nietian, with the glazed crystal, not only can it increase the speed of the godfiend nascent embryo's awakening, it can also help you suppress the godfiend aura. Now, even a peak paramount god powerhouse won't be able to sense the godfiend nascent embryo's aura from your body. Fat Cat laughed and said very proudly, He obviously knew that the godfiend nascent embryo was a taboo and couldn't be known to others. Unfortunately, Nye Tion's godfiend nascent embryo had already been exposed. Glazed crystal. It's indeed a good thing. Just as Fat Cat's voice fell, another voice sounded. Then, a figure appeared, startling Fat Cat. What the hell? Fat Cat cried out strangely. Seeing that there was a soul shadow beside him, he laughed and said, "So there's someone else here. That's great. My life from now on won't be so boring." Indra's face darkened. He looked at Fat Cat speechlessly. "Little old man, I can see that your soul aura isn't weak. You must have been a powerhouse before. Today, I'll be merciful and accept you as my little brother." Little Fat Cat chuckled, its crafty eyes sizing up Tion as it spoke with a proud expression. Indra was speechless and almost shouted out loud. He was a peak paramount god powerhouse, the heaven-slaughtering demon sword who had destroyed countless sections. But he had to be the little brother of a cat, and such a fat cat at that. Indra could only say, "This joke isn't funny at all. Little old man, I know what you're thinking." But at this moment, Fat Cat's face was full of confidence. He laughed and said, "You must have failed to break through to the sage realm. That's why you ended up like this. If you become my little brother, I might be happy and tell you the method to step into the sage realm. Furthermore, the glazed crystal can even help you reconstruct your fleshly body." Really? When Sakra heard Fat Cat's words, his eyes couldn't help but tremble violently, and his eyes revealed an unconcealable passion. Stepping into the sage realm and reconstructing the corporeal body, either one of these two conditions was enough to move Sakra heaven. "Do I look like I'm lying?" The fat cat immediately put on a serious face, its fat paw stroking its long whiskers, and it actually had the demeanor of an elder. It said faintly, "Don't worry, you won't lose out if you become my little brother." "Alright." Sakra thought for a moment and suddenly nodded heavily. His eyes flickered, and he actually opened his mouth and said, "Boss." Nye Tion clearly heard the conversation between the soul and the cat, and he couldn't help but feel speechless. Who would have thought that a peak deity realm expert of the past would actually become a cat's little brother, and he was even so willing. Nye Tion had some understanding of Fat Cat, and he didn't know if this fellow was tricking Sakra Heaven. Sakra Heaven was really interesting. He was actually settled by a cat with just a few words. Nye Tion smiled speechlessly and no longer paid attention to them. His figure moved, and he quickly walked out of the glazed demon pagoda. Nye Tion. Seeing Nye Tion walk out, everyone cried out in surprise. Who would have thought that Nye Tion actually entered the 12th floor, and he even walked out safely? Huajioshan had already felt that the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda had opened, and he was extremely excited. As if he still hadn't noticed, the glazed chi of the 12th floor was almost completely absorbed by Fat Cat, and it became a piece of glazed crystal. At this time, Huajioshan suddenly sensed the change in Nye Tion's strength. He couldn't help but frown, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. After Nye Tion entered the glazed demon pagoda, his strength actually rose again, and he advanced to the mid-god realm. This was too terrifying. Huajioshan felt that if he allowed Nye Tion to continue growing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Nye Tion's talent was too terrifying, and it exceeded his expectations. At this time, Nye Tion didn't pay attention to Huajioshan. He greeted Nye Dao and the others, and his figure moved, arriving beside Mo Rushi. Nye Tion. Mo Rushi's eyes were red, and there were still traces of tears at the corners of her eyes. She couldn't help but throw herself into Nye Tion's arms. "Rushi, you're my wager. How can I bear to lose?" Nye Tion said softly in his heart as he tightly hugged the girl in his arms. Following that, Nye Tion waited until Mo Rushi had calmed down before turning his gaze to Huajioshan. "Huajioshan, I've already entered the 9th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. It's time for you to scram, right?" Nie Tian stared at Huajiushan and said in a deep voice. Huajiushan's face sank. No one had ever dared to speak to him like this. He hadn't expected Nie Tian to enter the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. In this case, he had no reason to threaten the Wind and Rain Alliance. Huajiushan thought for a moment, then replied in a cold voice, Nie Tian, since you've fulfilled my conditions, I will naturally keep my promise. That's good. Nie Tianling smiled disdainfully. How could he not know what Huajiushan was thinking? Huajiushan definitely wanted to increase his strength after entering the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda, then settle the score with Nie Tian and the Wind and Rain Alliance. Although Nie Tian's talent was abnormal, he was still too weak. Huajiushan would make use of the glazed demon pagoda to break through the bottleneck of the 9-revolution glaze technique. Nangong, let's go. Huajiushan didn't waste any time. He shouted in a low voice and left in a flash. Nangong Duxiu followed him. Brother Nie, farewell. Xingtian Alliance Master Jiang Lai didn't dare to stay any longer after seeing the two heavyweights of the Sacred Parliament leave. He smiled sinisterly and left immediately. Jiang Lai, you despicable person! You'll suffer the consequences of your actions sooner or later if you stick together with Huajiushan. Nie Dao's lips trembled as he looked at Jiang Lai's figure. The Sacred Parliament and Xingtian Alliance left, leaving only Nie Tian and the Heaven and Earth duo behind. Lord Heaven Leader, Lord Earth Leader, thank you for your help. Nie Tian turned to the Heaven and Earth duo and sincerely thanked them. He didn't care who the Heaven and Earth duo were. Whether it was the inescapable Net or the ancient Ming race, it was an indisputable fact that they had helped him. If it wasn't for the Heaven and Earth duo, Huajiushan and Jiang Lai definitely wouldn't have compromised. Nie Tian, you don't need to thank us. We're just following Her Highness' orders. Tian leader responded indifferently. He then turned to look at Cher and knelt on one knee. He said respectfully, Her Highness, you've been gone for too long. Please return with us. Her Highness, please return with us. Earth leader also knelt at this moment and spoke respectfully. Seeing this, Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Although the two of them were kneeling and speaking respectfully, it was obvious that they were threatening him. Lord Heaven Leader, Lord Earth Leader, what's the meaning of this? Nie Tian frowned and spoke coldly. Sensing that the atmosphere wasn't right, Nie Dao's relaxed expression immediately tensed up. He looked at the Heaven and Earth duo with a heavy gaze. Chapter 1537. Cher furrowed her brows and scrunched up her face. How could she not sense the threat from the twin titans of Heaven and Earth? The twin titans of Heaven and Earth were most likely willing to follow her orders because of this moment. Tian Kuei had used the hand of the Netherworld Emperor earlier not only to intimidate the 9 gods, but also to intimidate Nie Dao. He had been plotting for this moment for a long time. The Dragnet hidden guards had been killed, and the twin titans of Heaven and Earth had arrived at the same time. They had clearly made up their minds to bring Cher back to the Dragnet. They urgently needed Cher's return for a major event, an earth-shattering event, to resurrect the Netherworld Emperor. The Netherworld Emperor, the heaven-punishing demon of ancient times, the supreme ruler of the ancient Ming. The twin titans of Heaven and Earth had set up the Dragnet with the ultimate goal of resurrecting the Netherworld Emperor. Not long ago, the Three Lives Reincarnation Formation had been activated with the help of the Three Lives Reincarnation Disc. However, in order to unleash its full power, the Vein of 3 Lives was required. The twin titans of Heaven and Earth wanted to bring Cher back with the help of her Vein of 3 Lives to activate the 3 Lives Reincarnation Formation and resurrect the Netherworld Emperor. Cher. Nie Tian saw Cher's hesitation. He moved to her side and said solemnly, "You don't need to listen to anyone's threats." Countless images flashed through Shui-Er's mind as she looked at Nie Tian, her crystal-clear eyes sparkling with tears. "Your Highness, please come back with us. This is your destiny." At this moment, the twin titans of Heaven and Earth spoke again. Destiny! Cher's eyes flickered when she heard these two words. The 3 Lives reincarnation disc appeared in her hand as her eyes trembled. Ever since she had obtained the disc, she had vaguely sensed a voice calling out to her, telling her to return. It was a demonic voice that came from the depths of the earth. It constantly affected her temperament and made her restless. Cher. At this moment, a deep and distant voice resounded from the depths of Cher's soul. Is this really my destiny? Cher's beautiful eyes flickered and became slightly blurred. She didn't know where she came from or who she was. All this while, she had never thought about this problem. But now, this problem was like a nightmare, haunting her at all times. Nia Tian, I have to go. Cher abruptly lifted her head, her eyes trembling as she looked at Nia Tian. She knew that there were some things she had to face. Schwer you. Nia Tian looked at Schwerer and felt the confusion in her eyes. For a moment, he was at a loss for words. I want to know who I am. Cher smiled faintly and said, Once I know who I am, I will come back to find you. Nia Tian looked at the innocent smiling face in front of him, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. All this while, he had been avoiding a question, and that was Cher's true identity. Back when he activated the 3 Lives Samsara disc, Nia Tian was very glad that he was the one who activated the Samsara disc and not Cher. He was afraid that Cher would leave him after she regained her memories. Now that Nia Tian thought about it, his thoughts were too selfish. He couldn't stop Cher from finding her true self, because that was the complete Cher. Nia Tian, some things can't be avoided. Let Cher go. At this time, Disher Tian's voice also sounded. Believe in her feelings for you. Even if she regains her memories, it won't change. Nia Tian nodded slightly in his heart. He stared at Cher. Cher, have you really made up your mind? Yes. Cher nodded with a smile, but a crystal tear flowed out of the corner of her eye. It flowed down her cheek and was incomparably clear. Nia Tian raised his palm and caught the tear. It condensed in his palm and didn't disperse like a pearl. The tear of a princess. Heaven and Earth duo was startled when they saw this. Their originally blurry faces became clear, and they were obviously extremely shocked. They didn't expect that Cher would actually shed the legendary tear of a princess at this moment. The thread of 3 lifetimes moves, the tear of a princess condenses. The tear of a princess was one of the 3 great legends of the ancient Ming race. According to the legends, the person who could touch the tear of a princess would be the person who would decide the fate of the ancient Ming race. Heaven and Earth duo suddenly looked at Nia Tian, and their eyes trembled. Could it be that Nia Tian was the legendary person of destiny? Nia Tian looked at the tear of a princess in his palm and seemed to feel something. It was a very strange feeling, but it was very vague. Nia Tian, I'm leaving. The corners of Cher's mouth curled up in an innocent smile. Her faint smile was beautiful enough to topple a city. She wanted to leave the most beautiful smile for Nia Tian. Heaven and Earth duo slowly stood up. Although they had a myriad of doubts in their hearts, they didn't reveal too much. They no longer hesitated and left with Cher. Nia Tian, I will definitely come back to find you. Cher's figure floated in the air. She didn't look back as she softly but firmly said in her heart, Cher. Nia Tian looked at the figure that was gradually disappearing into the distance, and a trace of tears finally fell from his eyes. A man doesn't easily shed tears because he hasn't been emotionally moved yet. Nia Tian, Cher will definitely be fine. After a long time, Emo Rushi came to Nia Tian's side and softly said, but she was very helpless. Nia Tian nodded firmly. He glanced at the tear of a princess in his hand and didn't think too much about it before putting it away. Cher being taken away by Heaven and Earth duo was not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, Cher's safety was guaranteed. Moreover, judging from how the Heaven and Earth duo treated Cher, they absolutely wouldn't harm her. Instead, they would protect her with their lives. However, Nia Tian didn't know when he would see Cher again. Strength, it's still strength. Nie Tian looked down and frowned as he thought to himself. He was still too weak. If he was strong enough, he wouldn't have been forced into such a state by Hua Jiushan and the others. In a world where strength reigned supreme, strength would always have the greatest right to speak. The battle between a few peak experts had turned the entire Mu city into ruins. At this moment, Heartbroken Prince, Nie Chio, Ed and the others appeared. Lord Holy Judgment, Mu city has been destroyed. Where should I go to collect the Origin Earthstone? Nie Tian looked at Heartbroken Prince and asked with a bitter smile. He was still thinking about the Origin Earthstone. It would be a waste if he didn't take something from the Holy Council. Heartbroken Prince was extremely shocked. Of course, he knew Nie Dao's identity, but he didn't know the relationship between Nie Tian and Nie Dao. He didn't even know why Nie Dao would appear here. Heartbroken Prince had a vague feeling that all of this was related to Nie Tian. Nie Tian, Mu City has been destroyed. Come to Divine Wind City in 3 days. I'll wait for you at the Divine Council branch there. Heartbroken Prince calmed down and said steadily. All right, thank you. Nie Tian smiled and didn't say anything else. Now, other than a few peak powerhouses, no one else knew his identity. He believed that Hua Jiushan and the others wouldn't publicize his identity either. Doing so wouldn't benefit the Holy Council or the Xingtian Alliance. Nie Tian, let's go, Nie Dao said indifferently when he saw that Nie Tian had settled everything. All right. Nie Tian nodded and prepared to leave with Nie Dao. Chapter 1538. God Shepherding Domain, Divine Wind City, Nie Family Branch, in a small courtyard. Rushi, how are you feeling? Did the little fellow kick you? Nie Tian supported Mo Rushi carefully, fearing that she would fall. Nie Tian, I'm really fine. I don't feel anything. Don't make a fuss, okay? Mo Rushi was speechless, but her face was filled with happiness. Ever since he knew that Mo Rushi was pregnant, Nie Tian had been carefully guarding her, fearing that something would happen to her. Actually, Mo Rushi didn't feel anything at all. Nie Dao had already said that the embryo period of the fiend god Origin embryo was 9 years long. The child in Mo Rushi's womb would probably be born in at least 10 years. Rushi, what's our child's name? Nie Tian suddenly looked at Mo Rushi and asked abruptly. Mo Rushi was speechless and said, There are still 10 years. You have plenty of time to think of a name. That's true. Other people get pregnant for 10 months. Why does my child have to be pregnant for 10 years? Nie Tian said helplessly. He originally thought that he would be a father in a few months. He didn't expect that he would have to wait for 10 years. Only now did Nie Tian know how much his mother had suffered when she was pregnant with him. He had to admit that it wasn't good to be too strong. Even giving birth was so difficult. Lord Nie Tian, the clan master is looking for you. At that moment, a man who looked like a servant appeared and called out respectfully. Nie Tian and the others were currently at the Divine Wind City branch. Nie Dao didn't bring Nie Tian back to the God Exclusion region. Instead, he came here. Nie Tian had been at the Divine Wind City for 2 days. Tomorrow, he would go to the Holy Parliament branch to collect the Origin Earthstone. Grandfather called me? What's the matter? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He couldn't help but ask in confusion. Hurry up. Mo Rushi urged, don't let grandfather and sixth uncle wait too long. Nie Tian nodded and warned, then be careful. A moment later, Nie Tian arrived at the lobby and saw Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu sitting in the lobby from afar. Grandfather, sixth uncle, did you call me? Nie Tian entered the main hall and saw that Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu had serious expressions, as if they had something to tell him. Nie Tian, take a seat. Nie Dao smiled and gestured for Nie Tian to sit. Nie Tian, how much do you know about your father? Nie Dao looked at Nie Tian and asked after some hesitation. Nie Tian's eyes flickered. He didn't hide anything and told him everything he knew. Regarding Nie Fenghua, Nie Tian did not know much. Most of it was heard from Yi Qinghai. Yi Qinghai. Hearing Nye Tian mention Yi Qinghai, Nye Dao couldn't help but laugh. He's really persistent. After so many years, he still hasn't given up on searching for Fenghua. Grandfather, what is the relationship between Elder Hai and Father? Nye Tian frowned and couldn't help but ask. Friends of life and death. Nye Dao's expression turned solemn as he said, Fenghua saved Yi Qinghai's life many times. Back then, Yi Qinghai offended an elder of the Holy Parliament and was imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison. It was Fenghua who helped him escape from the Dark Sea prison. So that's the case. Nye Tian nodded slightly. No wonder Yi Qinghai was so loyal to Nye Fenghua. Nye Tian, you already know most of the things about your father. The one who imprisoned him was the Holy Parliament. Nye Dao let out a long sigh and said, As for where he was imprisoned, I don't know either. You are too weak right now, so it's useless even if you know. At this time, Nye Feiyu suddenly asked with a curious expression, Nye Tian, you used dragon form before? What happened? When Mo Rushi and Cher were in danger, Nye Tian had used dragon form and directly confronted Jiang Lai's Xingtian armor. It was extremely domineering. This matter is a bit complicated. At the mention of dragon form, Nye Tian couldn't help but bitterly smile. He didn't hide anything and simply explained, The dragon vein seal is on my 9 dragon veins, but I can't control it. Whether I can dragon form or not, I can't decide. After Nye Tian's dragon form, the dragon vein seal became silent again and couldn't be used. Nye Tian tried to recall the details of that day and tried to dragon form again, but he couldn't control it. After trying several times to no avail, he could only give up. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu listened to Nye Tian's story and learned that he had so many fortuitous encounters over the years. Grandfather, that person called Jiang Lai, is he the realm lord of the sealed god region? Nye Tian suddenly asked as he thought of something. Nye Dao was slightly startled and said, The Xingtian Jiang family's ancestral ground is in the sealed god region. Several 100,000 years ago, Jiang Lai was indeed the sealed god region's realm lord, but he is no longer the realm lord now. His identity is even more terrifying than the realm lord. As expected, Nye Tian's expression darkened. It seemed that Jiang Lai was the Sword Elder's enemy. The Sword Elder was someone from several 100,000 years ago, so it wasn't strange that Jiang Lai's identity had changed. Nye Dao didn't know why Nye Tian would suddenly ask about Jiang Lai, but he didn't care. He said, Nye Tian, what are your plans now? Plans? Nye Tian was stunned. He didn't think too much about this. Yes. Nye Dao nodded and his expression became solemn again. He said, If you help Huojiu open the Glaze Pagoda to the 12th level, his strength will definitely increase again. At that time, I'm afraid the Wind and Cloud Alliance will no longer be a threat to him. Yes. Nye Feiyu nodded and said, Huojiu's strength is already at the peak of the paramount god realm. If he increases again, it's very likely that he will reach the legendary sage realm. At that time, no one in the 9 major realms will be his match. Little kid, don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything. Before Nye Feiyu could finish, a ridiculing voice suddenly sounded. Then, an exaggeratedly large cat appeared on Nye Tian's shoulder. It crossed its paws in front of its chest and said with an extremely arrogant expression, How can the sage realm be reached so easily? Even if Huojiu is given another 100,000 years, he still won't be able to reach the sage realm. This is? Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu couldn't help but be stunned when they saw a fat cat suddenly jump out of nowhere. Nye Tian's face darkened. He smiled awkwardly and explained, This is Fat. He's a clone of the Glaze Pagoda's artifact spirit. When I came out of the Glaze Pagoda, I conveniently brought him along. The Glaze Pagoda's artifact spirit. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu were stunned again. Who would have thought that not only did Nye Tian enter the 12th floor of the Glaze Pagoda, he even brought out an artifact spirit clone. This was too terrifying. Fat, you are very familiar with the Glaze Pagoda. In your opinion, how much will Huojio's strength increase after entering the 12th floor? Nie Tian became cold and asked solemnly. Fat Cat held its chin and pondered. After a long time, it said, Huojio's 9-revolution glaze technique has already reached the 4th revolution. After entering the 12th floor, he will probably be able to reach the 5th or 6th revolution. This way, he won't need to fear the backlash of the 9-revolution glaze technique. His strength should be at the half-sage realm. Half-sage. Nie Tian and the others were stunned. They didn't know what this strength meant. Actually, a half-sage realm expert isn't that great? Fat Cat curled its lips slightly and suddenly looked at Nie Dao. Huojio has reached the half-sage realm. You probably won't even be able to withstand his aura. Chapter 1539. In the Great Hall, Nie Tian and the others were stunned when they heard Fat Cat's words. If 9-revolution glass technique reached the 5th or 6th revolution, 9-revolution God's strength would reach the half-sage level. At that time, Nie Dao wouldn't even be able to withstand his aura. This was too terrifying. Although Nie Dao was at a disadvantage against 9-revolution God now, he had at least a 30% chance of winning. Even if 9-revolution God could kill him, he would have to pay a heavy price. But once 9-revolution God's strength reached half-sage, Nie Dao would no longer be his match. At that time, the two would be on completely different levels. Fat, you're joking, right? Nie Tian became cold and asked with a frown. Although he knew that half-sage was definitely stronger than peak supreme beings, there shouldn't be such a huge difference. After all, half-sage wasn't a true sage. Nie Tian, does this noble one look like I'm joking? Fat Cat raised his eyebrows and his whiskers stood up. He looked like he deserved a beating. Nie Tian's eyes flickered. It seemed that Fat Cat was telling the truth. Half-sage was indeed an exceptionally terrifying existence. Fat, 9-revolution glass technique was obtained from the Glaze Demon Pagoda, right? Nie Tian suppressed his shock and asked solemnly. Fat Cat nodded and said, with 9-revolution glass technique strength, it was impossible for him to become the master of the Glaze Demon Pagoda. Unfortunately, the previous master of the pagoda died mysteriously. In the end, 9-revolution glass technique got a great bargain. He dripped his blood on it and inexplicably became the master of the Glaze Demon Pagoda. 9-revolution glass technique's martial talent is average. Compared to the fiend god nascent embryo and the body of a sage, he's much weaker. If he had relied on his own talent, he would probably only be able to open the 5th level of the pagoda. However, this person is extremely scheming. After obtaining the pagoda, he cultivated the 9-revolution glass technique and used the glass chi to refine his body and open the 9 pupils. He walked step by step to the supreme peak and even established the Holy Parliament. If it weren't for those top-notch geniuses climbing the Glaze Demon Pagoda, Huojioshan wouldn't have been able to enter the 9th floor of the Glaze Demon Pagoda and her strength wouldn't be as terrifying as it is today. At this point, Fat Cat couldn't help but laugh. She looked at Nie Tian and chuckled. Now that you've broken through the 12th level of the Glaze Pagoda, you've done Calamity 9 a huge favor. His 9-revolution glaze technique is about to break through soon. Nie Tian frowned and his face darkened. He did not expect that breaking through the 12th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda would have such a huge impact. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Huojioshan's achievements today were all thanks to the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Next, with the help of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, his strength would break through again and reach an unknown terrifying level. The 5th transformation is the bottleneck of the 9-revolution glaze technique. Once you break through to the 5th transformation, you will no longer be pressured by the power of the backlash, and your combat power will increase substantially. Fat Cat pouted and continued, looking helpless. Fat, according to your estimation, how long will it take for Huojioshan to break through to the 5th transformation of the 9-revolution glaze technique? Nye Tian became cold and asked with trembling eyes. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu couldn't help but feel nervous. When Huijiushan would break through was related to the survival of the Wind and Rain Alliance. They hoped that it would take a little longer so that Nye Tian would have time to grow. That's hard to say. Fat Cat rubbed her chin and pondered. She said, Huijiushan's talent isn't top-notch, but it's not too bad either. He has been stuck at the fourth transformation for close to 200,000 years. After entering the 10th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, if he tries to cultivate by himself, it will take him hundreds or even thousands of years. That's good. Hearing this, Nye Tian let out a long breath. 1,000 years wasn't a long time for a God Realm martial artist, but Nye Tian was confident that he could raise his strength to the highest peak in such a long time. Only 1,000 years. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu cried out in surprise. They said in unison, How can it be so fast? 1,000 years was the most optimistic estimate for Nye Tian, and it was impossible for him to grow to the point where he could fight against Huijiushan. In the endless history of the 9 major domains, there were only a handful of martial artists who could step into the highest realm before the age of 10,000. As far as they knew, Nye Tian's father, Nye Fenghua, was one and Tian Kuei was another. Nye Feiyu might also step into the highest realm before the age of 10,000. Nye Tian's talent was above Nye Fenghua, Tian Kuei, and the others, but it was no different from wishful thinking for him to step into the highest realm within 1,000 years. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu didn't even dare to think of this kind of unimaginable speed of advancement. Grandfather, 6th uncle, 1,000 years is enough. Nye Tian smiled faintly at this moment, his eyes filled with an unusually domineering confidence. It was a huge problem for ordinary martial artists to reach the peak of the highest realm, but Nye Tian was confident in his own talent. One had to know that Nye Tian had only been in the domains for a few months, and he had already advanced from a heavenly emperor to a middle god. 1,000 years was enough for him. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu looked at Nye Tian. The domineering confidence in the latter's eyes shocked them. For a martial artist to have such confidence, there was nothing in this world that could stump him. Humph humph. However, at this time, Fat Cat laughed strangely and looked at Nye Tian with a playful gaze. He laughed mischievously and said, Little boy Nye Tian, you are too optimistic. This lord said that Huijiushan would need 100 to 1,000 years to break through. However, this is under the situation where he is fumbling around on his own. If Lord Main Body gives him pointers, this time will be greatly reduced. And? Nye Tian's eyes focused, and he was stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember that 9-tailed Chinchilla's main body was still in the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Although 9-tailed Chinchilla was only an artifact spirit, he was extremely powerful. If he gave Huijiushan pointers, it would be terrible. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu looked at each other and immediately understood. The Lord Main Body Fat Cat mentioned was the main body of the Demon Pagoda's artifact spirit. Fat, if your main body gives Huijiushan pointers, how long will he need to break through? Nye Tian swallowed and asked carefully. His voice was obviously a little nervous. Lord Main Body's strength is unfathomable. If he is willing to give pointers, even if Huijiushan is an idiot, he will be able to break through very quickly. Little Fat Cat had a casual look on its face as it chuckled. A conservative estimate would be a few decades at most. If it's less, it would be around 10 years. 10 years. Nye Tian's expression stiffened and he cried out in shock. To go from 1,000 years to 10 years, this jump was too big, and he could not accept it. He was confident that he could raise his strength to the paramount god realm in 1,000 years, but 10 years was undoubtedly a fool's dream. One must know that god realm martial artists often went into seclusion for decades or centuries. To them, 10 years was just the blink of an eye. Nye Dao and Nye Feiyu were even more petrified. Their eyes did not move, and they looked at Fat Cat in shock, unable to conceal the fear in their expressions. The atmosphere instantly became oppressive. Chapter 1540. Divine Wind City's Nya family's main hall was deathly silent. One could hear a pin drop. After a long while, Nya Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. His stiff expression relaxed a little, but he still couldn't hide the fear on his face. 10 years, I only have 10 years left, Nya Tian murmured in his heart, his eyes trembling and flickering. In an instant, he felt as if there was a sharp sword hanging over his head, which could fall at any time. With the temperament of the 9 gods of calamity, once she broke through, she would definitely attack the Wind and Cloud Alliance, as well as Nya Tian. At this moment, cold sweat seeped out of Nya Tian's back. Nya Dao and Nya Feiyu's expressions were still stiff, and they couldn't make a sound for a long time. Nya Tian, 10 years is actually not a short time. If you are willing to work hard, under this noble one's guidance, you might be able to ascend to the Supreme Realm. At this moment, Fat Cat chuckled, a relaxed expression on his face. You're not joking? Nya Tian's throat moved again, and he couldn't even speak coherently. Reaching the Supreme Realm in 10 years. If this came from someone else's mouth, Nya Tian would definitely think that person was crazy. But if it was said by little Fat Cat, there might be a slight chance. No matter what, Fat Cat was also a 9-tailed chinchilla, even though this fellow only had 1 tail. Of course! Fat Cat shrieked, then chuckled and said, "These 2 days, this noble one has already thoroughly examined your body. There are many good things in your body, and your martial physique has barely passed. If you can obtain some good things and eat them, your strength will increase by leaps and bounds." Good things? Nya Dao and Nya Feiyu were stunned. The former said, "Lord Chinchilla, are you talking about divine pills? What divine pill do you want? Even if it's a level 9 divine pill, I, Nya Dao, can give it to you." Many God Realm cultivators consumed large amounts of divine pills to ascend. This kind of increase in strength was very fast, but compared to those martial artists who relied on bitter cultivation to advance, their combat strength would be much weaker. Moreover, refining a divine pill also required time. Generally speaking, a 5th-tier divine pill could help a lesser god advance by 1 or 2 minor realms. However, it would take decades or even centuries of secluded cultivation to completely refine a divine pill. To Nya Tian, this sort of advancement in strength was simply the speed of a tortoise. It was completely unfeasible. Stop fooling around. What's so good about divine pills? The Fat Cat rolled its eyes at Nya Dao, its face full of disdain. Even if it was a level 9 god pill, it was still trash in its eyes, not worth mentioning at all. The good stuff it was talking about was definitely things like the glazed crystal and supreme twin flames. The Fat Cat had already checked Nya Tian's body. Apart from his celestial demon nascent embryo, there was also the supreme dragon meridians, the supreme dual flames, and most importantly, the raw star stone. The raw star stone was the thing that the Fat Cat valued the most. Before the celestial demon nascent embryo's 3,000 celestial demon power was completely awakened, the raw star stone was the most powerful thing in Nya Tian's body. The Fat Cat did not know where Nya Tian had obtained such a good thing like the raw star stone, but the raw star stone would be the key to Nya Tian's rapid advancement in strength. Without the raw star stone, the Fat Cat would not have dared to say that it could help Nya Tian advance to the Supreme Realm within 10 years. "Lord Main Body, you have 9 tails, and I only have 1. Let's have a competition this time. Let's see whether your guidance of the 9 calamity deities is more powerful, or my guidance of Nya Tian is more powerful." The Fat Cat chuckled in its mind and said sinisterly, "Fat, I believe you." Nya Tian nodded solemnly. At this moment, he had no choice but to believe in the Fat Cat. "Little boy Nya Tian, believe in me. This will be the wisest decision you'll ever make in your life. We'll set off tomorrow to search for the good stuff." The Fat Cat smiled proudly. Its fat body circled around Nya Tian once before entering the nascent embryo space. "Grandfather, 6th uncle, I'll be going out to train with Fat. I'll leave Ru Shi in your care. Nie Tian nodded slightly and his eyes became resolute. He did not have much time left, so he had to make the most of it and improve his strength without stopping. Amen. Nie Dao nodded solemnly and said, Your sixth uncle and I will bring Ru Shi back to the Wind and Cloud Alliance today. She'll definitely be safe there. Nie Dao had already left the Wind and Cloud Alliance for 2 days. There were some matters that he had to attend to. There was no longer any meaning for him to stay here. In the past 2 days, he had already investigated the surrounding cities and found nothing out of the ordinary. This meant that the news of Nie Tian possessing the celestial demon nascent embryo had not spread yet. At this moment, Huijiushan must have entered the Glaze Demon Pagoda to cultivate. The Holy Parliament would not make a move against Nie Tian for the time being. Moreover, Nie Dao knew that although he and Nie Feiyu could protect Nie Tian by staying here, it would also cause him to lose the opportunity to train. If a martial artist wanted to become stronger, they could not always stay in their swaddling clothes. From now on, Nie Tian would have to walk his own path. All right. Nie Tian nodded solemnly and stood up. He said, I'll go find Ru Shi now. Saying so, Nie Tian turned and left the hall. A moment later, Mo Ru Shi, Nie Chiu, and Ed arrived. Nie Tian had already explained the situation to Mo Ru Shi, so the two had no choice but to separate. Mo Ru Shi understood that if she stayed by Nie Tian's side, she would become his burden. Moreover, the child in her womb would be in danger. Although she did not want to be separated from Nie Tian, she had no other choice. Nie Tian, I will arrange for Ru Shi to enter the Nie family's ancestral ground. She will be absolutely safe there, Nie Dao said solemnly with a grave expression. Thank you, grandfather. Nie Tian nodded slightly. Although he did not know where the Nie family's ancestral ground was, since Nie Dao said it was absolutely safe, then there should be no problem. Father, are you going to let Miss Ru Shi enter the Nie family's ancestral ground? Nie Feiyu frowned and said worriedly, I'm afraid the Elders' Council might not agree. This matter is not up to them. Ru Shi carries the Nie family's bloodline. I must ensure her safety. Nie Dao said solemnly and in an extremely domineering manner. The Nie family's ancestral ground was where the Nie family rose to power. It was an alternate space. Rumor had it that one of the 9 creators, the Nie family's ancestor, was in the Nie family's ancestral ground and had left behind his inheritance. Originally, only members of the Nie family were allowed to enter the Nie family's ancestral ground. Although Mo Ru Shi was Nie Tian's wife, her surname was not Nie. If Nie Dao allowed her to enter the Nie family's ancestral ground, the Nie family's Elders' Council would most likely object. However, he could not care so much. For Mo Ru Shi's safety, he had to let her enter the Nie family's ancestral ground. Following that, Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu did not delay any further and left with Mo Ru Shi. Nie Dao and the others rose into the sky and disappeared into a divine boat, passing through the void and leaving. Nie Tian looked at the gradually disappearing divine boat in the sky. His eyes were filled with warmth and moisture. Mo Ru Shi leaving with Nie Dao was the best choice at the moment. Ru Shi, don't worry. I will definitely let our child be born into this world safely, Nie Tian said solemnly in his heart. His eyes revealed extreme determination. Nie Tian looked at the sky and only calmed down after a long time. Cher had left, and Mo Ru Shi had also left. One could imagine the disappointment in his heart. After a while, Nie Tian returned to his room, and his emotions gradually calmed down. At this moment, Fat Cat's figure suddenly appeared and said indifferently, Little doll, your 2 wives are quite impressive. One has the body of a sage, and the other has the meridians of 3 lives. No wonder God Huijiu can't tolerate them. Nie Tian laughed, but his face was filled with bitterness. He had to admit that this fat cat was indeed impressive. She could see through everything at a glance. Just this eyesight alone was more impressive than Sakura. Fat, what are we going to look for next? Nie Tian asked indifferently. He was much calmer now. Let's look for the Mother Earth origin stone first. Fat Cat raised her eyebrows and said casually. Chapter 1541. Origin Earth Stone. In the hall, after hearing Fat Cat's words, Nye Tion's expression froze for a few seconds. Seeing Nye Tion's reaction, Fat Cat couldn't help but be surprised and laughed. You know about Origin Earth Stone too? I can't tell that a little kid like you knows quite a lot. Nye Tion slowly reacted. He just felt that this was too much of a coincidence. Regarding Origin Earth Stone, he didn't know much. He only heard some information from Zhao Zi. But Inescapable Net and Crimson Moon Peak both wanted to get their hands on Origin Earth Stone. It was obvious that it was a very precious item. Nye Tion didn't hide anything and immediately told Fat Cat about the God Palace tournament, and finally said, I know nothing about Origin Earth Stone, I've never even seen it before. So that's how it is. Fat Cat let out a weird cry, then looked at Nye Tion weirdly and chuckled. Nye Tion, your luck is really not bad, you get whatever you want, even this deity is a little jealous. Get to the point. Nye Tion couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Fat Cat, and asked directly, what exactly is Origin Earth Stone? Ordinary Origin Earth Stone, of course it's not something good. Fat Cat smiled proudly and said, but Origin Earth Stone with high purity, that's different. Origin Earth Stone is a strange kind of origin stone born deep underground. It can absorb Origin Earth Essence energy. Origin Earth Essence energy. Hearing this name again, Nye Tion couldn't help but be stunned and asked, is this a kind of origin energy? Fat Cat let out another surprised cry, looked at Nye Tion with a weird expression, and chuckled. Nye Tion, you're getting more and more amazing, you actually know about origin energy. Eyebrows furrowed, Nye Tion asked in a grim voice, is it very powerful? He had only heard of origin energy, other than that, he knew nothing about it. The power of origin is involved in the creation and destruction of this world, so of course it's powerful. The Fat Cat let out a strange cry, but then laughed and said, but you're too weak right now. You can't understand origin energy at all, so I won't tell you too much. You only need to know that there's a huge secret behind the Mother Earth primordial stone. That's enough. With that, the Fat Cat's body flickered and disappeared. Nye Tion's face darkened, and he could only smile helplessly. Fat Cat returned to the space of the nascent embryo, and Sakra's figure appeared beside him. He frowned and said, Fat Boss, you can't really be thinking of bringing Nye Tion to search for Mother Earth vital energy, right? That is Earth attribute source power. Although Nye Tion's demon essence can fuse with source power, his strength is far too weak. I'm afraid he won't be able to withstand that kind of power, right? The current Sakra had really become the underling of the Fat Cat. The Fat Cat chuckled and said, Little Tion, looks like you don't know what Mother Earth vital energy is at all. That's just a kind of secondary source power, and it's still far from the true origin energy. Let Nye Tion try to absorb some Mother Earth vital energy first, and see how much his 10th vital meridian can withstand. I'll plan for the future. I'll listen to Fat Boss. Sakra smiled awkwardly. He indeed knew very little about origin energy. Little Tion, I'm going to rest, you can leave. The Fat Cat waved his hand casually, and his round body stretched lazily. He actually yawned. This scene was a little funny. Sakra was a person who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. If the time that his soul had existed was included, it would be close to 1,000,000 years. He was once a pinnacle expert, yet he was bowing and scraping in front of a Fat Cat. It was truly laughable. Fat Boss, that secret regarding advancing to the Sage Realm. At this moment, Sakra chuckled, and his eyes shone brilliantly with incomparable passion. Little Tion, don't be anxious. The Fat Cat smiled meaningfully and said, You're not a child, and you should know the logic of haste makes waste. How can it be so easy to break through to the Sage Realm? Our next focus is on how to help you recover your corporeal body. As for the matter regarding the Sage Realm, We'll talk about it after you recover your corporeal body. All right. Sakura nodded his head with a helpless expression. Of course he knew the difficulty of breaking through to the sage realm. Back then, he killed tens of thousands of swordsmen and created the Wan Jian soul tomb, but he still failed to break through to the sage realm. There was also the desolate ancestor, who was also an example of someone who failed to break through to the sage realm. Sakura understood that before his corporeal body recovered, everything was just empty talk. Everything couldn't be rushed, so he had to endure it slowly. The fat cat chuckled, but in his heart, he said, "Little Tian, the secret of the sage realm is this deity's biggest bargaining chip to control you. How can I casually say it out? Do you think this deity is as stupid as you?" The fat cat glanced at Sakura, and then his body moved, and he actually directly entered the ocean that was condensed by the power of gods and demons. The power of gods and demons is an abnormally tyrannical life force. Whether this deity can grow 9 tails and become a real 9-tailed chinchilla, it all depends on the ocean of gods and demons. The fat cat lay on his back on the ocean of gods and demons with a comfortable and contented look, and secretly said in his heart. At this moment, a small fork actually appeared at the tip of his tail, and under the infiltration of the power of gods and demons, it slowly and steadily expanded. The forked tail was a sign of the growth of the 9-tailed chinchilla, indicating that the fat cat was going to grow from 1 tail to 2. The ocean of gods and demons was the power of gods and demons that had not yet awakened. In any case, Nye Tian had no use for it, so it just happened to benefit the fat cat. However, what the fat cat didn't know was that while he was absorbing the power of gods and demons, in addition to his strength increasing, his body was also undergoing strange changes. At the same time, outside the origin embryo space, Nye Tian sat cross-legged and quickly entered a state of cultivation. His divine sense entered the Star River domain, and Nye Tian directly came to the 6th layer of the Star River. At this moment, his strength was already at the early stage of the mid-god stage. From the low god to the mid-god stage, the biggest change for Nye Tian was the awakening of the power of 100 billion stars. At this moment, the power of the 900 billion stars in his body had awakened 600 billion, and the 6th layer of the Star River was completely lit up. What kind of boundary is this Star River forbidden space? Nye Tian looked at the shining 6th layer of the Star River, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up, and he murmured. When the 6th layer of the Star River opened, what Nye Tian received was the Star River forbidden space. 2 days ago, he had thoroughly sensed the Star River forbidden space, and it seemed to be a very powerful boundary. When Nye Tian released the Star River forbidden space, he could feel the power of the stars in his body grow a lot stronger. The heaven-shrouding totem, the eye of the starry sky, the hellfire crucible, the starry sky ancient martial incantation, and the starry sky sword formation were all greatly strengthened in the Star River forbidden space. Nye Tian muttered to himself, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. I wonder if the forbidden Starry River domain will weaken others in any way other than me. Up until now, he had never used the Star River forbidden space. However, he could sense that the Star River forbidden space was definitely a very terrifying boundary. The powerful energy of the boundary was even more terrifying than Luo Xian's 1,000 Clouds enchantment. Chapter 1542. The next morning, as the sun rose, Nye Tian walked out of his room. Moments later, Nye Qiu and Ed appeared. Nye Tian informed the Patriarch of Divine Wind City's Nye family and left with Nye Qiu and Ed. Today was the appointed day with Heartbroken Prince. They were going to the Holy Assembly's branch. Brother Nye Tian, will we be able to get the reward for the grand competition of the 12 Shrine today? Ed asked excitedly. If nothing goes wrong, we should be able to get it. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He was also looking forward to seeing what the legendary Mother Earth primordial stone was. At this moment, Fat Cat seemed to have discovered something. He suddenly let out a strange cry and appeared on Nye Tion's shoulder. He stared at Ed with his exaggeratedly large eyes and laughed. This kid is not bad. He actually has such a powerful divine dragon bloodline, no wonder he could fuse with the demon dragon's heart. Fat Cat's eyes were sharp, as if no one had any secrets in front of him. He could see through Edie's divine dragon bloodline and demon dragon's heart. Nye Chio and Ed had seen Fat Cat before, so they were not too surprised. Fat Cat, do I need you to tell me that? I, Ed, will grow to be a man at the pinnacle of the sovereign stage. Ed smiled happily. Fat Cat curled his lips and said, You're not bad. The Demon Dragon King chose the right person to give you the Demon Dragon's heart. Of course. Ed roared with laughter, and he couldn't help but feel slightly smug. Nye Tion smiled and scanned Ed with his divine sense. He was startled and asked, Ed, you've become a low god? Yes. Ed nodded and said, I broke through after coming out of the glazed demon pagoda. Nye Tion nodded and smiled. He deeply felt Edie's terrifying talent. One should know that Ed was only in his teens, but he relied on his own strength to break through to the godly realm. It was truly terrifying. No wonder this kid is so arrogant. Turns out that he has broken through to the god realm. Nye Tion glanced at Ed and laughed in his heart. A few moments later, Nye Tion and the others appeared in the Holy Parliament branch. Nye Tion couldn't help but wryly smile at the majestic palace before him. I hope there won't be any accidents this time. After entering the Great Hall, Nye Tion saw young Master Heartbroken from afar. Young Master Heartbroken was already waiting for him. Nye Tion walked up to the heartbroken young master and smiled faintly. Lord Holy Judge. Nye Tion, you're here. Young Master Heartbroken nodded with a smile and said, Come with me. Under young Master Heartbroken's lead, Nye Tion and the others arrived at a secret room. After entering the room, Nye Tion saw that the other two holy arbiters were also there. Chen Wuqing and the others were also waiting. When Chen Wuqing saw Nye Tion and the others, he couldn't help but look at them. When he sensed Nye Tion's strength, his eyes couldn't help but tremble and his whole body stiffened on the spot. In just a few days, Nye Tion had advanced from the late stage of low god to the early stage of mid god. Chen Wuqing looked at Nye Tion with a dumbfounded expression. His expression clearly said, This is impossible. Breaking through several realms in just a few days was impossible in anyone's eyes. What happened to Nye Tion completely shattered Chen Wuqing's understanding of martial arts. He originally thought that he and Nye Tion were geniuses of the same level. But now, he suddenly realized that his talent was worlds apart from Nye Tion's. The others also sensed the change in Nye Tion's strength, including Jiang Baoyu and Nye Wushang. They were shocked and couldn't utter a word for a long time. Nye Tion stood where he was, calm and collected. The others didn't know what happened in Muyu City that day, so it wasn't strange for them to have such expressions. After a while, an azure-robed old man walked out of the inner hall. Behind him were several black-robed cultivators. Each of them had powerful but restrained auras. They were all mid-god experts. The azure-robed old man walked up and swept his gaze across the crowd. He asked in a deep voice, The 6 leaders are here, right? The 3 holy arbiters bowed and nodded. Leaders of the 3 celestial emperors, please step forward, the azure-robed old man said indifferently. Ed, Hu Zhongling, and Situ Qian stepped forward. The azure-robed old man's divine sense swept over the 3, then he took out 3 divine elixirs and said, The divine elixirs in my hands are 7th-grade divine elixirs. They will greatly help you improve your strength. Take them. Thank you, Your Excellency. The 3 bowed and expressed their gratitude. Each of them received a divine elixir. Although 7th-grade divine elixirs weren't particularly valuable, they were very useful to Ed and the others. They could help them improve again. Next, the azure-robed old man smiled strangely and glanced at Nye Tion and the others. He waved his hand and a pile of smooth and round black stones appeared on the ground. They were about the same size. The moment the pile of black stones appeared, the room was filled with a mysterious aura that made people feel indescribably comfortable. Origin Earth Stone. In Nie Tion's mind, Fat Cat's exclamation sounded. She seemed very excited. This is the Origin Earth Stone? Nie Tion was stunned and speechless. The azure-robed old man had thrown something as precious as the Origin Earth Stone out like trash. This was too ridiculous. Qin Wuqing and Gong Sun Baoyue were also stunned. They didn't understand. 3 lesser god leaders, this is your reward, the Origin Earth Stone. The azure-robed old man raised an eyebrow and said, "Come forward and pick. Each of you can only take one." Nie Tion was taken aback once again and almost cried out, "Only one?" He originally thought that the Origin Earth Stone would be a huge rock like the 3 Lives Stone. He didn't expect it to be a pile of small stones the size of a goose egg. What he couldn't accept the most was that he could only take one small stone. He couldn't understand why the lesser god leaders would receive such a reward. "What, you don't want it?" The azure-robed old man's face darkened when he saw Nie Tion and the others stunned. He said impatiently, "If you don't want it, I'll keep the Origin Earth Stone." "Yes, of course I want it." Nie Tion finally reacted. He took a step forward and prepared to pick a Origin Earth Stone. Since he was already like this, he might as well pick one. This azure-robed old man should be a god pill master. Moreover, his level wasn't low and he had a bad temper. Nie Tion walked forward and looked around. He saw a larger one and stretched out his hand, wanting to pick it up. "Wait." At this moment, Fat Cat's voice sounded, almost scaring Nie Tion. "What's wrong?" Nie Tion's gaze froze and he asked with a frown. "Nie Tion, these Origin Earth Stones have all been used. The Origin Earth energy in them has basically been depleted. The Holy Parliament is really black-hearted to use this as a reward for the lesser god leaders." Little Fat Cat pouted and said, "That old man has a few unused Mother Earth primordial stones on him, you have to get those pieces over." "They've all been used?" Nie Tion was stunned. No wonder this green-clothed old man casually threw out the Mother Earth essence stones. It turned out that they were all used waste. At this moment, Nie Tion looked at the azure-robed old man and his eyes darkened. Chapter 1543. In the room, Nie Tion looked at the old man with burning eyes, and his expression gradually became gloomy. "Brat, why are you looking at me like that?" The old man had a guilty conscience and was scared by Nie Tion's stare. He couldn't help but growl. "Nothing." Nie Tion smiled faintly and said, "I just didn't expect that the Holy Parliament would give a pile of used Mother Earth Origin stones as a reward." As soon as Nie Tion's words fell, everyone present was stunned and looked at the azure-robed old man with a strange expression. The others didn't know, but the 3 holy adjudicators knew that the Holy Parliament would definitely give out good quality Mother Earth Origin stones, and it was impossible for them to be used. "Brat, what nonsense are you talking about?" The old man was furious and roared, "These Mother Earth Origin stones are all good quality. Although they are a little broken, they are definitely not used. If you are not satisfied, I will let you take a few more pieces." The old man obviously didn't expect that Nie Tion could see that the Mother Earth Origin stones on the ground were used. Mother Earth Origin stones were precious items, and very few people had seen them before. Moreover, there wasn't much difference between used and unused ones, and even divine alchemists below level 5 couldn't tell. Nie Tion looked ordinary, so how could he see through it? "Take a few more pieces?" Nie Tion laughed and said faintly, "Lord Elder is really generous. Do you think you can give away something like Mother Earth Origin stones just like that?" "You!" The old man panicked and couldn't say anything for a moment. Heartbroken young master and the others were smart people, and they immediately noticed that something was wrong. Their expressions changed. "Stinking brat, don't slander me. This elder is a rank 7 divine pill master of the sacred assembly. If this elder says that this is a good Mother Earth essence stone, then it's definitely not wrong. The green-robed elder panicked and directly used his status to pressure Jiang Qin. These divine alchemists dealt with all kinds of herbs and cauldrons all day long, and they weren't very scheming. With just a few words, Nie Tian found out the truth. Lord Elder, the 3 holy adjudicators are here. You have to be responsible for what you say. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "Why don't we wait for the other elders to come and let them determine the truth?" The old man in cyan became even more flustered. His eyes flickered violently as he roared in a low voice, "Brat, what do you want?" Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Lord Elder, don't you have a few pieces of Mother Earth origin stones? Take out those pieces." "How did you know?" The green-robed old man was stunned and blurted out. Only in the next moment did he realize that he had spilled the beans. "Sir, please don't make things difficult for us." Heartbroken young master finally understood what was going on. He took a step forward and spoke with a gloomy expression. Jiang Baoyu and Nie Wushang also took a step forward with heavy expressions. The green-clothed elder had an embarrassed expression as he glared at Nie Tian. In the end, he still took out 3 pieces of Mother Earth essence stones from his body. 3 low-level deity chiefs and 3 pieces of Mother of Earth origin stones. This was obviously not a coincidence. Nie Tian took 1 piece of Mother of Earth origin stone and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. "And this piece is not bad. It has sufficient Mother Earth origin energy." The fat cat chuckled and was very satisfied. He then said, "Nie Tian, ask where these Mother Earth origin stones came from. Also, ask for this pile of waste on the ground." Nie Tian's face darkened. The fat cat was really insatiable. He even wanted the waste. "Lord Elder, I would like to ask, where did these Mother Earth origin stones come from?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and his expression was much calmer. "I don't know." The green-robed old man had a sullen expression. If it wasn't for Nie Tian, he would be able to pocket the 3 pieces of Mother Earth origin stones. Nie Tian laughed bitterly and had a helpless expression. "Forget it, this Mother Earth origin stone is estimated to be several 100,000 years old. This old man probably doesn't know either. Let's wait for me to use my heaven-defying method and see if I can find the Mother Earth origin vein. If we can find the Mother Earth origin vein, we will be rich." The fat cat waved his hand impatiently and chuckled. "Mother Earth origin vein?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. He didn't know what the fat cat was talking about. He didn't ask much and looked at the green-robed old man again. He forced a laugh and said, "Lord Elder, you don't want these waste on the ground, right? Why don't you give them to me?" Take it, take it." The green-robed old man had an irritated expression and directly left. The waste of the Mother Earth origin stones were no different from ordinary stones when the Mother Earth origin energy was depleted. They were completely useless. Nie Tian chuckled and took out his spatial ring. He directly kept all the Mother Earth origin stones. The others at the side were stunned. They didn't know why Nie Tian wanted a pile of waste stones. At this moment, everyone's gaze towards Nie Tian changed again. They became very respectful. If it wasn't for Nie Tian this time, those 3 Mother Earth origin stones would have been taken away by the green-robed old man. "Nie Tian, since you guys have already received the reward, it's time to return." Heartbroken young master let out a long breath of turbid air. His expression was much more relaxed. As long as he sent Nie Tian back to the God-shocking realm, his mission would be complete. "Lord Saint Adjudicator, I won't trouble you. Can you please hand over the realm divine ship to me and let me return by myself?" Nie Tian looked at heartbroken young master and smiled faintly. This heartbroken young master was in a difficult position. He said, "I am the Saint Adjudicator of the God-shocking realm. I have the responsibility to protect you guys back to the God-shocking realm safely. If anything happens to you guys, I will feel uneasy. Lord Saint Adjudicator, don't worry. We will be fine." Nie Tian nodded and smiled with a firm expression. All right. Heartbroken young master saw that Nie Tian was insistent. He thought for a while and finally agreed. Heartbroken young master then handed the Realm Divine ship to Nie Tian and told him how to use it. He repeatedly reminded that the Realm Divine ship could only be used once. If it was used again, it might not be able to withstand the impact of the spacetime storm. Nie Tian put away the Realm Divine ship. After thanking heartbroken young master, he didn't stay any longer and immediately left the Holy Parliament. After leaving the Holy Parliament, Nie Tian didn't rush back to the God-shocking realm. Instead, he went to the God Wind mountain range outside the Divine Wind City. He wanted to take a good look at the Mother Earth origin stone first. After entering a valley, Nie Tian sensed around. After confirming that there was no one around, he took out the Mother Earth origin stone and placed it in the center of his palm to sense it. It contained an extremely violent energy, as if it was nurtured by a powerful life force. Mother Earth origin stone, what is the use of it? Nie Tian muttered to himself with a puzzled expression. Although the Mother Earth origin energy was strange and violent, Nie Tian couldn't sense anything else. Why would the Heavenly Network care so much about a small Mother Earth origin stone? The Mother Earth origin stone isn't the main point. The main point is, where did the Mother Earth origin stone come from? Our goal is to find the Mother Earth origin vein. At this time, Fat Cat's voice sounded. Immediately after, he was shocked and shouted, "Someone is coming!" Nie Tian frowned and spread out his consciousness. As expected, he saw a figure appear. When he saw the face of this figure, he heaved a sigh of relief and muttered, "So it's Chen Wuqing. Shouldn't Chen Wuqing have returned to his own realm? Why is he here?" Nie Tian thought to himself and prepared to walk out of the valley to take a look. But in the next moment, he suddenly frowned as he sensed that there was someone behind Chen Wuqing. Chapter 1544. What a good elder of the Holy Parliament! It seems like you still haven't given up on the Mother Earth primordial stone. When Nie Tian saw that elder, his gaze turned cold as he sneered in his heart. This elder failed to take the Mother Earth primordial stone and actually sent people to secretly follow him all the way here. He was simply courting death. Chen Wuqing walked out of the valley and didn't notice that someone was following him. When he saw the valley in front of him, he couldn't help but smile. It seemed like he came here specifically to look for Nie Tian. "Kid, stay here." Just when he was about to enter the valley, a cold voice suddenly sounded behind him. Following which, several figures appeared and a violent aura came crashing over like a tsunami. "Who is it?" Chen Wuqing reacted quickly. He suddenly turned around and stomped on the ground. His figure frantically retreated several hundred meters and barely avoided the incoming attack. "It's you guys!" Chen Wuqing stabilized his body and couldn't help but cry out in alarm when he saw the faces in front of him. The people who appeared in front of him were the elder of the Holy Parliament and 3 black-clothed martial artists. "Stinking brat, you have obtained the Mother Earth primordial stone and should have left with your saint adjudicator. Who would have thought that you would actually come to the Divine Wind mountain range alone? You are truly gutsy." The elder laughed and said coldly, "You are a martial artist from the 3 lower realms. Even if your talent is very strong, you shouldn't stay in the 3 middle realms for too long. Now obediently hand over the Mother Earth primordial stone." Chen Wuqing's brows suddenly sank and he said sternly, "Sir, you are an elder of the Holy Parliament. You are actually doing this kind of shady business. You are truly shameless." "Shameless?" The elder didn't get angry but laughed instead. He said coldly, "Kid, you don't know how precious the Mother Earth primordial stone is. For the Mother Earth primordial stone, I, Yang Zhongqiu, can be shameless for once? Moreover, as long as I kill you, who will know what happened here? Attack." After saying that, the elder gave a low roar and signaled the 3 black-clothed men behind him to attack. The 3 black-clothed men took a step forward. Wild killing intent surged out and forced Chen Wuching to continuously retreat. The three of them were very strong. Two were mid-stage mid-gods and one was late-stage mid-god. By contrast, Chen Wuching was only an early-stage god. If he had to deal with one of the three of them alone, he might have a chance. However, if he had to deal with all three of them at the same time, he would have no chance at all. Die! The three black-clothed cultivators roared at the same time and struck out with their palms. Three violent auras condensed together, converging into a massive palm shadow that crazily pressed down on Chen Wuching. Chen Wuching felt an almost crushing force descend upon him. Although he knew that he could not resist this force, he still fought back with all his might. He struck out with his palm and at the same time retreated madly. Boom! There was an explosion in the void. Chen Wuching's palm was directly shattered. Suddenly, a destructive force fell, smashing fiercely towards him. The ground within a radius of several thousand meters was directly torn apart. Gravel flew everywhere and grass and trees collapsed. Ah! In the next moment, Chen Wuching let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire body was almost torn apart by the immense pressure. At the moment of life and death, a strange power surged out and wrapped around him, blocking most of the power. Then, a figure rushed out of the valley in the distance and landed beside Chen Wuching. Nia Tian. Chen Wuching barely managed to stabilize his body. His face was as white as paper. Looking at the face in front of him, he could not help but exclaim in surprise. "Are you okay?" Nia Tian smiled faintly. It was he who had used the Heavenly Wind battle armor to save Chen Wuching at the critical moment. "I'm fine." Chen Wuching forced a smile. Then, his body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, Nia Tian had acted in time. Otherwise, Chen Wuching would have been a corpse. "Stinky brat, it's you!" Yang Zhongqiu exclaimed when he saw Nia Tian suddenly appear. Then, his face became wild with joy. He shouted, "Ling, stinky brat, I didn't expect you to have not left the Mushan domain. It seems that this elder is going to get 2 Mother of Earth origin stones." Yang Zhongqiu thought that Nia Tian had already left. He only followed Chen Wuching here and did not know that Nia Tian was also here. Nia Tian's appearance was a pleasant surprise for him. "You are Yang Zhongqiu, right?" Nia Tianling sneered. He had already heard Yang Zhongqiu's words. He said solemnly, "If you don't want others to know, don't do it in the first place. As an elder of the Holy Parliament, you actually robbed the chief of the low god appointed by the Holy Parliament. This is not a small crime, right? Stinky brat, big or small crimes have nothing to do with you. You came here today, do you still expect to leave alive?" Yang Zhongqiu sneered. The killing intent in his eyes intensified. Nia Tian caused him to lose the Mother of Earth origin stones. Seeing the former again, he could not control his killing intent. "You want to kill me with just these 3 small fries?" Nia Tian glanced at the 3 black-clothed martial artists and sneered. His eyes were full of contempt. He did not put these 3 people in his eyes at all. "Arrogant!" Yang Zhongqiu bellowed. He then looked at the 3 and said furiously, "Kill this brat!" The 3 black-clothed martial artists were infuriated by Nia Tian's disdain. They suddenly moved and attacked at the same time. They actually wanted to kill Nia Tian directly. Rumble! They joined hands again. This time, the 3 of them exploded with even more terrifying power. They were determined to kill in one strike. "Nia Tian, be careful!" Chen Wuching saw that the situation was not good and cried out in alarm. He knew that Nia Tian's strength had increased to early-stage mid-god. However, he believed that even if Nia Tian's battle strength was stronger than his, it would not be by much. He would not be able to resist 2 mid-stage mid-god and 1 late-stage mid-god. Nia Tian, however, sneered. He then moved his body and released a strange energy. A strange fluctuation appeared in the air and spread across the space within 10,000 meters, enveloping everyone. In the next moment, Nie Tian struck with his sword. The mighty sword's shadow was like a ferocious giant beast, roaring and roaring. Rumble! With a loud bang, the two forces collided. Violent shockwaves rolled and exploded. Nie Tian was pushed back several hundred meters, but he was not injured. On the other hand, the three black-clothed martial artists were sent flying. While they were still in the air, they vomited blood. How is this possible? The three black-clothed martial artists forcibly stabilized their bodies. They were stunned and cried out in alarm. The three of them had joined hands but were repelled by an early-stage mid-god. Moreover, they were injured. This was too strange. Chen Wuqing was also stunned at this scene. He was so shocked that he could not speak. At this moment, he realized that there was a huge gap between his and Nie Tian's battle strength. Nie Qiu and Ed were also stunned. They did not expect Nie Tian to be so strong. It's a boundary. Yang Zhongqiu was a divine alchemist. He suddenly realized that he was enveloped by a boundary. His face darkened and he shouted in horror. Yang Zhongqiu, you are not too stupid. Nie Tian smiled coldly. His eyes were cold and his whole body was releasing a cold, murderous aura. At this moment, he had released the starry river Forbidden Sky. His battle strength had greatly increased. Just now, he had blocked the joint attack of the three black-clothed martial artists with a casual swing of his sword. He had even injured them. Chapter 1545. The Forbidden Space Barrier's power exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. He estimated that his battle prowess would increase by at least several times inside the Forbidden Space Barrier. Smelly brat, you're not a world spiritist. How can you construct such a powerful barrier? Yang Zhongqiu's eyes widened, his voice trembling. Who said that only ward masters can construct wards? Nie Tian said with a cold smile. Then, he took a step forward, his killing intent surging from his body to the brim. The three black-clothed cultivators were stunned by Nie Tian's aura, involuntarily retreating. You shouldn't have provoked me. Nie Tianling sneered, sword intent surging from his body, slashing down with heaven's slash. Terrifying chaotic flames surged from the sword's shadow as it pounced towards the three black-clothed cultivators. The three black-clothed cultivators wanted to resist, but they discovered that their strength was being suppressed by a strange force. When they attacked again, they didn't have the same power as before. The seemingly powerful palm strike was instantly submerged by the sword's shadow. The three black-clothed cultivators didn't even have time to scream before they died, leaving only three godheads floating in the air. Nie Tian's figure descended, waving his hand as three godheads appeared in his palm. With a flick of his palm, soul-devouring sword intent gushed out, directly erasing the divine sense inside the godheads. Nie Tian's attack was decisive, cruel, and vicious. If Cher were here, she would definitely object to his actions. Too much killing intent would only make the evil energy in Nie Tian's blood more obvious. But Nie Tian naturally had his reasons for doing this. On one hand, it was because of his monstrous hatred towards the Holy Parliament. On the other hand, if he let these black-clothed cultivators leave, it would inevitably attract more powerful enemies. Since Yang Zhongqiu was an elder of the Holy Parliament, his status was definitely not low. For him, the Holy Parliament would most likely send out overgods or even supreme gods. If that happened, it would be terrible. You actually dared to kill someone from the Holy Parliament? At that moment, Yang Zhongqiu finally came to his senses. He looked at Nie Tian with a terrified expression, his eyes filled with extreme shock. Nie Tian's strength was far beyond his expectations, and Nie Tian's decisiveness also shocked him. It was hard to imagine that a cultivator from the three lower realms would dare to kill someone from the Holy Parliament. Chen Wuqing's eyes also widened as he looked at Nie Tian in disbelief. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would have believed that a newly promoted mid-god could have such terrifying strength? Just a bunch of small fries, so what if I killed them? With a cold smile, Nie Tian took a step forward and fixed his eyes on Yang Zongqiu. The killing intent in his eyes intensified as he said in a deep voice, "Not only do I dare to kill them, but I also dare to kill you." You! Yang Zongqiu swallowed hard. His face was as pale as a piece of paper. The fear in his heart was written all over his face. With Nie Tian's decisiveness in killing just now, he would definitely dare to kill him. You can't kill me. I'm an elder of the Holy Parliament. If you kill me, you'll become an enemy of the Holy Parliament. Yang Zongqiu forced himself to calm down, but his voice couldn't help but tremble. Is that so? Nie Tianling laughed, but his eyes were full of contempt. He was already an irreconcilable enemy of the Holy Parliament. Killing an elder was just enough to vent his hatred. Although Yang Zongqiu was an elder of the Holy Council, he was clearly different from elders like Yang Wu and Xueman Zhuang. He was a divine alchemy master, but his martial prowess was not strong. He was merely an early-stage midgod, the same as Nie Tian. However, his battle prowess was worlds apart from Nie Tian's. As long as Nie Tian wanted to, he could kill him in one move at any time. Yang Zongqiu, what else do you want to say? Hurry up and say it. If you don't say it now, you won't have another chance. Nie Tianling sneered, and his eyes turned cold. He would definitely not let Yang Zongqiu leave alive. I. Yang Zongqiu's teeth were chattering, and he couldn't even speak. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his eyes flickered. He said anxiously, I discovered a big secret. As long as you don't kill me, I'll tell you this secret. Nie Tian laughed and said cold, Tell me. Origin Earth Stone. Yang Zongqiu swallowed his saliva, and his eyes flickered. He said, There's a big secret hidden within the Origin Earth Stone. If you want to know, you have to promise not to kill me first. Speak. Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and he released his killing intent, enveloping Yang Zongqiu. I'll speak. Yang Zongqiu became honest this time. His small eyes rolled around, and he said, I've been in the Sacred Congress Pill Hall for tens of thousands of years. When I'm free, I like to study ancient alchemy books. One day, I found a map in an ancient book. That map recorded the distribution of the Origin Earth veins in the 9 domains. Origin Earth veins. When Nie Tian heard these 4 words, he couldn't help but be stunned. This was because he had just heard Little Fat Cat mention about the Mother Earth Vitality vein, and Little Fat Cat wanted to use the Mother Earth Vitality Stone and the ordinary Mother Earth Vitality vein. Continue. At this moment, Fat Cat's figure directly appeared on Nie Tian's shoulder. Her sharp eyes flickered and she spoke anxiously. When Yang Zongqiu saw a Fat Cat suddenly appearing on Nie Tian's shoulder, he couldn't help but be stunned. However, he didn't pay much attention to it. After thinking for a while, he continued, The map I obtained is dead, and I need Origin Earth Stones to activate it. But because my position in the Sacred Congress isn't high enough, I can't obtain perfect Origin Earth Stones. I can only collect used Origin Earth Stones. Unfortunately, those Origin Earth Stones don't have enough Origin Earth Chi to activate the map. Speaking until here, Yang Zongqiu had a helpless expression. Nie Tian chuckled and said, So, you want to keep the 3 Origin Earth Stones as the reward for the leader of the Lesser Gods, right? Yes. Yang Zongqiu nodded with an embarrassed expression. He only requested to come to the God Husbandry domain to deliver the reward to the God Husbandry domain. Originally, he wanted to keep the Origin Earth Stones for himself, but he didn't expect to meet Nie Tian. Yang Zongqiu was only an outer elder of the Sacred Congress, and the Origin Earth Stone was an extremely precious item. Other than the core elders of the Pill Hall, even the inner elders couldn't obtain it. For so many years, he could only obtain some used Origin Earth Stones from the core elders, so he couldn't activate the distribution map of the Origin Earth veins. The Origin Earth veins were mineral veins formed by the Origin Earth Stones. If he could find one, it would be a huge fortune that would shock the 9 great realms. Yang Zhongqiu had been careful for so many years and kept the geographical vein map a secret. He hoped that he could activate the geographical vein map one day and obtain the origin Earth vein. Unfortunately, God disposes. He had just obtained the origin Earth stone, and before he could even warm up to it, he met Nie Tian. "Old man, hurry up and take out the geographical vein map." At this moment, Fat Cat's gaze became extremely passionate. He chuckled and his gaze was extremely greedy. Yang Zhongqiu was stunned and said in a deep voice, "I'll take out the geographical vein map. You can't kill me." "Cut the crap. Take it out." Fat Cat couldn't be bothered with him. He let out a weird cry, and his voice became extremely sharp. Yang Zhongqiu swallowed his saliva. Only now did he know that Fat Cat was a powerful character. After dilly-dallying for a long time, he finally took out the geographical vein map. It was a round piece of stone. It wasn't very big and was about a meter long. Many strange runes were carved on it, and one could vaguely see that it was a map. Chapter 1546. It's just a map, is there a need to be so excited? Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw the Fat Cat's almost deranged reaction and mumbled, "Little kid, what do you know? This map isn't simple. Whether or not this deity can guide you to complete your goal depends on it." The Fat Cat chuckled and raised his paw. The stone map floated in front of him, and an ancient aura was released. Nie Tian's gaze froze slightly. He didn't expect this map to be so mysterious. Yang Zhongqiu was also stunned at the sight and thought doubtfully, "Could it be that I've underestimated the value of the geographical meridian distribution map? Geographical meridian distribution map, I didn't expect you to fall into this deity's hands." The Fat Cat looked at the geographical meridian distribution map in front of him and chuckled. His 2 big eyes looked a little wretched. Nie Tian couldn't help but twitch his mouth and said, "Fat, what's the use of this map?" Nie Tian's consciousness was strong and he could feel the strong rune aura from the geographical meridian distribution map. Unfortunately, he didn't recognize those runes at all and didn't know what they represented. The Fat Cat chuckled and ignored Nie Tian. After a long time, he calmed down and looked at Yang Zhongqiu with his sly eyes. He smiled meaningfully and said, "Old fellow, you've already tried to activate the geographical meridian distribution map, right? How did you know?" Yang Zhongqiu was stunned and cried out in surprise. The moment he got the Mother Earth element stone, he tried to activate the geographical meridian distribution map, but failed. Yang Zhongqiu had studied the geographical meridian distribution map for tens of thousands of years and found the method to activate the geographical meridian distribution map in an ancient book. Unfortunately, he tried to activate the map according to that method but failed. "How did you activate it?" The Fat Cat wasn't anxious and chuckled. Yang Zhongqiu was stunned for a moment. Only now did he know that the Fat Cat was unusual. He didn't dare to hide anything and immediately told him his method. In the end, he said with a face full of doubt, "I followed the Mother Earth element formations arrangement, but I couldn't activate the geographical meridian distribution map. How strange." Mother Earth element formation. The Fat Cat's sapphire eyes flickered and said, "I didn't expect you to know so many things. It seems that it's better to keep your life." You're not going to kill me?" Yang Zhongqiu was stunned for a moment before he reacted, and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. "I won't kill them for now." The Fat Cat smiled strangely. She then moved and carefully placed the map on the ground. She then went to Nie Tian's shoulder and said, "Nie Tian, drip a drop of blood on the map." Dripping blood. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Dripping blood to recognize me as its master?" He knew that some divine artifacts and sacred artifacts could be bound by blood if they didn't have a master. "You're thinking too much." The Fat Cat rolled her eyes at Nie Tian and said, "Let me borrow your godfiend blood." Nie Tian was stunned and didn't say anything. He took a step forward and forced out a drop of blood from his fingertip, dripping it on the center of the map. When the god-fiend blood landed, it was directly absorbed by the map, instantly vanishing without a trace. Nie Tian frowned and asked curiously, "This map can absorb human blood?" At this moment, the fat cat stared at the map with a burning gaze, as if waiting for something to happen. Unfortunately, there was no movement on the map. Nothing happened at all. How is this possible? The fat cat was puzzled and said, "The life force of the godfiend blood is stronger than that of the meridian of 3 lives. Why is there no reaction from the map?" "Fat, is there a problem?" Nie Tian asked with a frown. "Drip another drop of blood." The fat cat's expression was unprecedentedly serious as she said in a deep voice. Nie Tian didn't ask anything and dripped another drop of blood. However, it was still absorbed by the map and nothing happened. Again. The fat cat almost became irritated and growled, "My judgment of the map can't be wrong. The strong life force of the godfiend blood can definitely activate the map." Nie Tian had a helpless expression and didn't care about a few drops of blood. When he dripped the 9th drop of blood, an unusual scene finally appeared. The 9th drop of blood wasn't absorbed by the map. Instead, it slowly flowed on the map. "It's about to succeed." Seeing this, the fat cat cried out in excitement. After a short while, the originally dim map suddenly lit up. It flickered with a strange light, and the runes on it began to slowly surge. The map had actually been activated. Seeing this, Yang Zhongqiu was stunned and his face was full of disbelief. He couldn't activate the map even with the Mother Earth Stone, but the fat cat activated the map with a few drops of Nie Tian's blood. This was too strange. This is considered as activating the map? Nie Tian was astonished. Although he could sense the aura of life from the map, he still couldn't understand anything. The fat cat smiled proudly and said, "I'm really a genius. I can even think of using the godfiend blood to activate the map. I'm really too smart." Nie Tian was speechless. He really wanted to know what shocking information was contained in the map that made the fat cat so excited. My lord." At this moment, Yang Zhongqiu reacted and couldn't hold it in anymore. He asked, "The ancient records say that the map must be activated by the earth vein formation. What happened just now?" The fat cat rolled its eyes at him and said with disdain, "The earth vein formation activates the map by using the Mother Earth Stone's elemental energy, which is actually a strong life force. In terms of life force, the Mother Earth Stone is too far away from the godfiend blood. To activate the map, it required a strong life force. The godfiend blood contained an incomparably strong life force. It was very normal for it to be able to activate the map. Old man, do you think the map is so simple?" The fat cat looked at Yang Zhongqiu cold and said, "The map is in your hands. It's a waste of resources. Even if you can activate the map, you won't be able to see anything. This is because the words on the map are in the ancient Ming language. The number of people who know the ancient Ming language can be counted on one hand." Ancient Ming language? Nie Tian was stunned. He immediately thought of a race, the ancient Ming race. Ancient Ming language was obviously the language of the ancient Ming race. "I remember now." At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly let out a weird cry. His face was filled with surprise. "What did you remember?" The fat cat was stunned. If Nie Tian knew the ancient Ming language, then he would really look at Nie Tian in a different light. Of course, Nie Tian didn't know the ancient Ming language, but he had seen it before. The 3 lives reincarnation plate. Nie Tian calmed down a little and murmured, "I've seen the ancient Ming language on the 3 lives reincarnation plate before." No wonder Nie Tian vaguely felt that the runes on the map were somewhat familiar. Turned out that those runes were the same as the runes on the 3 lives samsara disc. The 3 lives reincarnation plate. When the fat cat heard this name, he couldn't help but let out a weird cry. He asked in astonishment, "You've seen the 3 lives reincarnation plate before?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded his head heavily and told the fat cat about how he saw the 3 lives reincarnation plate. Chapter 1547. Oh no! What's wrong? Nie Tian saw that little fat cat was panicking, and he couldn't help but frown in confusion. Although the fat cat was unreliable at times, he had never panicked before. Anything that could make him panic was definitely something serious. The activation of the triple lifetime samsara disk means that the triple lifetime samsara formation has been activated. This also means that the ruler of the ancient Ming, the emperor of the underworld, is about to be resurrected. The fat cat's eyes flickered as he spoke with a solemn expression. The emperor of the underworld is resurrecting? Nie Tian was taken aback. His frown deepened as he asked in confusion, "Who is the emperor of the underworld? Is he very scary?" He had heard of the name emperor of the underworld more than once. The mystic dragon demon Saint Ni Jianming, the sacred union leader 9 Gods Calamity, the wind and cloud alliance leader Nie Dao, and the Xingtian alliance leader Jiang Lai. These powerful characters would either be secretive or terrified when they heard the name. Most importantly, the emperor of the underworld had an inexplicable connection with Cher. Under such circumstances, Nie Tian was even more interested in the emperor of the underworld. Nie Tian, do you know the 2 people who took Miss Cher away, the heaven and earth leaders? The fat cat frowned and asked in a deep voice. I know, they are from the ancient Ming race. Nie Tian nodded with a serious expression. Yes. The fat cat shook his head with a wry smile and said, It seems that the purpose of the inescapable net was to resurrect the emperor of the underworld. Sigh. It's all because of the sins I committed back then. You? Nie Tian was taken aback and speechless. Little Fat Cat was merely the spirit of the glazed demon pagoda and a clone. Moreover, it was only the 9th clone. Before it left the glazed demon pagoda, what could it do? Sigh. The fat cat heaved another long sigh and said, Tens of thousands of years ago, Tian Kuei entered the 9th floor of the glazed pagoda and had a conversation with me. It was me who told him that he was from the ancient Ming race. Otherwise, Tian Kuei would never have known his true identity for the rest of his life. If he didn't know who he was, he wouldn't have set up the inescapable trap, and he wouldn't have tried so hard to revive the emperor of the underworld. This is truly the cycle of karma and reincarnation. It circulates without end, and the will of the heavens exists in the unseen world. I see. Nie Tian was speechless. He knew that Tian Kuei had seen Fat Cat before, but he did not expect such a thing to happen. However, this matter could no longer be stopped. The inescapable net had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and even a force like the Holy Parliament didn't dare to touch it. At this moment, there was no need to even think about Nie Tian. Fat, is the emperor of the underworld very powerful? Why is everyone so afraid of him? After the fat cat calmed down, Nie Tian frowned and asked. Of course he is. The fat cat let out a strange cry and said, The Netherworld Emperor is the emperor of the ancient Ming race. He is known as the heaven-punishing demon. Back then, the 9 creators had to join forces to kill him. However, they were unable to destroy his demonic heart and could only imprison it. As long as the demonic heart was still alive, the Underworld Emperor would not die. One day, he will come back to life. That's terrifying. Nie Tian was stunned. Yi Qinghai had once mentioned the 9 creators to him. They were rumored to have created this world. The 9 of them had to join forces to defeat the Emperor of the Underworld, but they were unable to kill him completely. The Emperor of the Underworld's power was evident. If the Emperor of the Underworld were to come back to life, wouldn't he be able to destroy all realms with a wave of his hand? Nie Tian was stunned and cried out. Of course. The fat cat let out a strange cry and nodded solemnly. If the Emperor of the Underworld were to come back to life, then it would truly be the end of the world. Even an expert like Huo Jiushin would be nothing in front of the Emperor of the Underworld. This. Nie Tian was stunned and couldn't speak for a moment. Nie Tian, don't think too much. The fat cat shook her head with a smile and said, Tian Chief's plan to resurrect the Emperor of the Underworld has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if the Three Lives reincarnation formation is activated, the Emperor of the Underworld won't be able to come back to life overnight. Right now, the most important thing for you is to increase your strength. Fat, can you tell me the relationship between Cher and the Emperor of the Underworld? Nie Tian calmed down and suddenly asked. Is there any use in knowing this now? The fat cat frowned slightly. Even if it's useless, I still want to know. Nie Tian's expression was solemn, but his eyes were resolute. He said, since Cher possesses the bloodline of the Emperor of the Underworld, she should be a descendant of the Emperor of the Underworld, right? You can say that. The fat cat saw that Nie Tian was unusually determined. After a moment of hesitation, she said, I can only tell you that the relationship between Cher and the Emperor of the Underworld is similar to the relationship between this noble one and Lord Main Body. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly trembled. He said solemnly, Are you saying that Cher is a clone of the Emperor of the Underworld? She's not a clone. She's more complicated than a clone, and far more powerful. The fat cat frowned and said, The relationship between Cher and the Emperor of the Underworld is very complicated. Even if I explain it to you, you won't be able to understand it. You can temporarily treat Cher as a clone of the Emperor of the Underworld. Nie Tian let out a long breath, and his expression gradually calmed down. Strength, it was still strength. At this moment, he felt that the responsibility on his shoulders was very heavy. In the future, he would not only have to face the 9 gods of calamity, but also the Emperor of the Underworld, who was currently in the process of resurrection. The Emperor of the Underworld was not someone that the 9 gods of calamity could compare to. It was very likely that this person was a true Saint Realm expert. Nie Tian, don't think too much. Your talent and willpower are both top-notch. Among all the martial artists this noble one has met, no one can compare to you. As long as your strength increases to the highest peak, you might be able to fight against the Emperor of the Underworld. The fat cat saw through Nie Tian's thoughts and chuckled. It was actually very optimistic. Nie Tian nodded. It was useless for him to think too much at the moment. It would only add to his worries. Fat, what are we going to do next? Nie Tian asked as he looked at the fat cat. He had completely calmed down. The geographical vein map has already been activated. Of course, we have to try and see if it's useful. The fat cat chuckled and said, Now, let's see if there's a Mother Earth vital vein in the God Husbandry domain. Lord, are you going to use the geographical vein map? Yang Zhongqiu's eyes lit up when he heard the fat cat's words. Old man, look carefully. This is how the geographical vein map is used. The fat cat reprimanded him angrily. Then, he said to Nie Tian, Nie Tian, take out your Mother Earth vital stone and those waste stones. Nie Tian agreed and took out the Mother Earth vital stone and a pile of used raw stones. The fat cat's body trembled slightly. Waves of colored glaze chi were released from his body and condensed into a strange pattern in the air. It looked like a formation. Then, he raised his 2 paws and the Mother Earth vital stone floated up and landed in the center of the pattern. Then, other waste stones appeared in other parts of the pattern. So powerful! Nie Tian frowned. He could feel a strong aura of a formation appearing. His eyes couldn't help but tremble a little. The fat cat was indeed very powerful. His attainments in formations were simply terrifying. At this moment, the formation started to revolve. A ray of light slowly condensed in the center of the formation and flowed into the geographical vein map. The geographical vein map sensed it and shone brightly. Streams of rune power gushed out and surged in the space. Soon, a vast map of light and shadow was formed, covering the space within a radius of tens of meters. Chapter 1548. Yang Zhongqiu noticed that the floating map around him was the map of God shepherding territory and couldn't help but scream. Old man, you're not that stupid after all. Fat Cat chuckled, then his eyes turned sharp. He looked at the map in front of him and observed it carefully. Nie Tian and the rest were stunned. Fat Cat's methods were simply heaven-defying. Using a piece of Mother Earth origin stone and a pile of waste to condense a map of the entire God shepherding territory was truly terrifying. Nie Tian, we're searching the entire God shepherding territory now. If I didn't have the geographical meridian map, I could only search the area within 1,000 miles at most. With the geographical meridian map, I can search the entire territory in one go. Little Fat Cat smiled complacently, its eyes roaming nonstop as it tried its best to search for the Mother Earth vital vein. Nie Tian looked at everything around him. Those floating runes were the ancient Ming language. He couldn't understand them at all. At this moment, no one dared to speak loudly for fear of disturbing Fat Cat. I can't be so unlucky. After a while, Fat Cat sighed and said angrily, God shepherding territory is so big, but there isn't a single Mother Earth origin vein. Fat Cat cursed while still searching. Unfortunately, he really couldn't find anything. After a while, the map gradually weakened and finally disappeared. Fat, what's going on? Nie Tian asked in a daze as he saw the map disappear, the map become dimmer, and the aura of the formation become weaker. The Mother Earth origin energy in the Mother Earth origin stone was exhausted and couldn't support the opening of the map. Of course, the map closed. Fat Cat sighed helplessly. Sigh. God shepherding territory doesn't have a Mother Earth origin vein. Nie Tian was speechless. So a piece of Mother Earth origin stone could only support it for so long. So what do we do now? Nie Tian went blank for a moment before a helpless expression appeared on his face. Nie Tian, I still have a piece of Mother Earth origin stone. At this moment, Chen Wuqing walked over and handed the Mother Earth origin stone to Nie Tian. Thank you. Nie Tian didn't stand on ceremony and kept the origin Earth stone. He asked, Chen Wuqing, why are you here? Shouldn't you have returned to the realm of flame heaven? Nie Tian, to be honest, I'm here to look for you. Chen Wuqing nodded solemnly. Looking for me? Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, How did you find this place? He was indeed curious as to how Chen Wuqing could find his way here. The latter was not a warrior with a strong perception. There is a trace of my mother's aura in your body. My godhead is very sensitive to this aura. That's why I can find you. Chen Wuqing did not hide anything and said directly. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect it to be like this. Back in the colored glazed demon pagoda, Nie Tian's fiend ether had entered spacetime. Later on, when he killed Chen Wuqing, he triggered the innate guardian in the latter's body and absorbed all the power of the innate guardian. Therefore, there was a trace of Chen Wuqing's mother's aura in his body. Chen Wuqing relied on this trace of aura to find Nie Tian. Nie Tian, don't worry. This aura is weakening and will disappear soon, Chen Wuqing explained with a faint smile. Why are you looking for me? Nie Tian also smiled and asked. I want to train with you. Chen Wuqing didn't pretend and said directly, Are you willing? Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, Of course. Chen Wuqing had already taken out the origin Earth Stone. If he didn't bring Chen Wuqing along, it wouldn't be right. Chen Wuqing wasn't weak. It wasn't bad to have someone like him by his side. Fat, what should we do next? Nie Tian looked at Fat Cat and asked with a frown. Other than the God shepherding territory, there are 8 other territories. Let's not go to the upper 3 realms. Pick one of the remaining 5 territories. We still have one origin Earth Stone with us, so we only have one chance. We can only try our luck. Fat Cat sighed softly. He was depressed that he couldn't find the Mother Earth vital vein in the God shepherding territory. Then let's go back to the God awakening territory. Nie Tian thought for a moment and nodded. He originally wanted to go back to the God Awakening territory. All right. Fat Cat forced a smile and said, I reckon that the possibility of finding the Mother Earth vital vein in the lower 3 realms is higher. Nye Tian nodded and prepared to leave the God Shepherding territory immediately. He didn't kill Yang Zhongqiu. Instead, he let the latter follow them to the spiritual territory. Yang Zhongqiu admired Fat Cat from the bottom of his heart. He couldn't ask for more than anything to be able to follow beside Nye Tian. Immediately, Nye Tian opened the Realm Divine boat, and everyone entered it. They set off immediately. In just a few minutes, Nye Tian and the others returned from the God Shepherding territory to the God Awakening territory, the land of the Crimson Moon. Nye Tian put away the Realm Divine boat and looked down. He immediately recognized that they had arrived at the land of the Crimson Moon. Below them was the Crimson Moon mountain range. When they returned to the God Awakening territory again, Nye Tian forced a smile on his face. This was the first territory he knew, and it felt like his home. Although he had only left the God Awakening territory for less than 10 days, too many things had happened. Returning to the God Awakening territory felt like a lifetime had passed. When he went to the God Awakening territory, Mo Rushi and Cher were still by his side. Now that he returned to the God Awakening territory, they were no longer there. If Nye Tian was given another chance, would he still bring Mo Rushi and Cher to the God Awakening territory? He didn't know what he would choose. But he knew that some things couldn't be avoided. Although Mo Rushi and Cher weren't by his side, they were at least safe. That was enough. Big brother Nye Tian, let's go down. Ed was very excited when they returned to the God Awakening territory. Nye Tian agreed, and everyone descended. After a while, Nye Tian and the others arrived at a valley in the Crimson Moon mountain range. He spread out his divine senses, and was slightly relieved when he confirmed that there was no one around. Nye Tian, are you sure you want to use the Mother Earth Essence Stone in the God Awakening territory? Fat Cat appeared and looked at Nye Tian. They only had one Mother Earth Essence Stone now. The rest were useless. If they couldn't find the Mother Earth Essence vein in the God Awakening territory, they would be in trouble. Yes. Nye Tian nodded heavily and smiled bitterly. The Realm Divine boat has been used. It's impossible to go to other territories now. Let's go to the God Awakening territory. I don't believe my luck is so bad. All right. Fat Cat smiled and took out the geographical meridian map. Everything went according to plan. After a while, a map of light and shadow appeared in the valley. The whole valley was filled with it. Nye Tian's heart was beating so fast that he could hear it clearly. He hoped that he could successfully find the Mother Earth Essence vein this time. Fat Cat stared at the map and sensed it bit by bit. Ha! At a certain moment, Fat Cat let out a strange cry of excitement. Found it! Before he finished his sentence, Fat Cat released a ball of glazed air from his body. He locked onto a location and shouted, "It's here!" Nye Tian's gaze trembled and became extremely passionate. His luck was really good. He actually found the legendary Mother Earth Essence vein. Chapter 1549. Inside the valley, Nye Tian frowned and his face darkened when he sensed that someone had appeared outside. Something's wrong. This is. Almost at the same time, Fat Cat seemed to have discovered something and suddenly let out a strange cry. His already large eyes suddenly widened as if he had discovered something very terrifying. Fat, what's wrong? Nye Tian frowned when he saw Fat Cat's reaction and his eyes flickered. 9 Dragons Geographical Vein, 9 Dragons Geographical Vein, this is the legendary 9 Dragons Geographical Vein. The little Fat Cat did not hear Nye Tian's words at all. Its eyes trembled violently, and it screamed shrilly. Its voice became shrill, as if it was a cat that had gone mad. Nye Tian was stunned. He didn't know what little Fat Cat had discovered to make it so excited. Its reaction was almost crazy. Fat Cat was a person who had seen the world. Ordinary things wouldn't be able to enter his eyes. For him to be so excited at this moment, he must have discovered something very terrifying. Who is it? However, right at this time, several figures suddenly appeared at the entrance of the valley. They shouted loudly and were surging with killing intent. Nye Tian, stop them. Don't let anyone enter the valley. Fat Cat's face darkened and he let out a strange cry. Nye Tian didn't ask too much. His figure moved and appeared at the entrance of the valley, blocking the way. At this moment, there were more than a dozen gray-robed cultivators outside the valley. From their attire, they should be the Red Moon Divine Palace's guards. They seemed to be patrolling and accidentally discovered Nye Tian and the others. You are Nye Tian. When the leader saw Nye Tian's appearance, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he smiled sinisterly and said, Nye Tian, since you've returned to the Crimson Moon Divine Palace, follow me back to see the Palace Master. You are the guard commander of the Red Moon Divine Palace, Wang Lin? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment before he recalled that he had seen the person in front of him before. He was one of the 4 guard commanders of the Crimson Moon Divine Palace. Nye Tian, since you know me, come with me. The Palace Lord is looking for you. Wang Lin faintly smiled as he took a step forward. His entire body's aura was restrained and tensed up, ready to attack at any moment. Wang Lin was one of Qi Yefeng's trusted aides. Qi Yefeng had been waiting for Nye Tian to return. Qi Yefeng had already issued an order to the guards and elders of the Crimson Moon Divine Palace. As long as they saw Nye Tian, they must bring him back, dead or alive. Qi Yefeng wanted the Mother Earth primordial stone so badly that he had almost gone crazy. He even had the intention to kill Nye Tian. Qi Yefeng is looking for me? Nye Tian frowned slightly, and his eyes became very strange. He knew that Qi Yefeng wanted the Mother Earth primordial stone. He even had doubts about Qi Yefeng's identity. He felt that Qi Yefeng definitely had another identity besides being the Red Moon Palace Lord. Nye Tian, you have helped the Crimson Moon Divine Palace obtain the first place of the lower God Chief and stabilized the position of the Crimson Moon Divine Palace. The Palace Lord is waiting for you to return from the God Husbandry domain. He will hold a celebration banquet for you. Wang Lin faintly smiled, but his eyes were filled with malice. Nye Tian frowned slightly. He took a step forward and said cold, There's no need for a celebration banquet. I am just passing by the Crimson Moon Divine Palace, and will leave immediately. Leave? Wang Lin laughed. He sensed Nye Tian's vigilance, and decided not to hide anything. He said cold, Do you think that's possible? With a sneer, Wang Lin released his aura, which turned into rolling waves that pressed towards Nye Tian, forcing him to take a few steps back. Boom! The invisible waves bombarded the map formed by the geographical meridian diagram. It had a certain impact on the runes, and the entire map became messy as if it was about to collapse. The fat cat was concentrating on observing something. When the map was messed up, he couldn't help but shout, Nye Tian, stop him. Don't let anyone near the valley. Nye Tian furrowed his brows. His body trembled, and a ball of white light burst out of his body, enveloping the entire valley. With the protection of the extreme wind firmament battle armor, the map immediately stabilized. Wang Lin looked at the figures in the valley, and then at the strange map. He couldn't help but ask, What are you doing? Although Wang Lin wasn't a divine array master and his perception wasn't strong, he could still sense an extremely strong array aura. It's none of your business. If you take another step forward, you will die. Nye Tian let out a bellow as his rage transformed into a raging will to fight. Sword intent surged out of him, making him look like a sword of slaughter. Humph! Seeing that Nye Tian's aura wasn't weak, Wang Lin sneered and said, You think you can kill me? Although Wang Lin wasn't a top-notch expert in the Red Lunar Divine Palace, he possessed early-stage high god strength. He didn't put Nye Tian in his eyes at all. "Nye Tian, since you won't go back with me, I won't stand on ceremony," Wang Lin smiled coldly. Wang Lin coldly smiled as a cold, killing intent appeared in his eyes. Before he finished his sentence, he took a step forward and violently punched out. Rumble! Raging power surged out as an enormous fist shadow rumbled towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian creased his brows. He couldn't retreat from this punch. He could only take it head-on. Behind him was the valley and Fat Cat was still in the valley. Moreover, the geographical meridian diagram was still active. It must not be destroyed. Divine Star Soul Armor! Nye Tian roared. His body trembled and a pair of Star Soul wings appeared on his back. An armor of Star Soul appeared around his body. The shield of Star Soul formed a shield of light and shadow that enveloped the valley. At the same time, the flame of Star Soul surged on the tip of the sky-severing sword. A mighty sword shadow surged out like a dragon. Boom! A loud noise was heard. Terrifying air waves erupted in midair. An endless amount of violent energy wreaked havoc in the space. Nye Tian's body paused for a moment before he was sent flying. He struggled to flap his Star Soul wings to stabilize his body. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He was only an early-stage mid-god. It was a little difficult for him to fight against an early-stage high-god. But thanks to the protection of the armor of Star Soul, Nye Tian didn't sustain any serious injuries. The valley was also protected by the shield of Star Soul and the firmament wind armor. How is this possible? Wang Lin's eyes trembled when he repelled Nye Tian with a punch. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He had never imagined that Nye Tian would be able to withstand his punch so easily. This was simply impossible. One must know that there was an entire realm of difference between the two of them. Nye Tian, hang in there, I will be fine very soon. At this moment, the voice of Fat Cat sounded. She sounded somewhat excited. Nye Tian turned around to look at the valley. The scene that greeted his eyes made him tremble. On the map of light and shadow, there were many strange light spots that lit up. The power of the runes surged crazily, and all the light spots connected together, faintly forming a dragon-shaped image. It was as if a giant dragon was lurking underground, waiting for the moment to break out of the abyss. Is this the 9 dragons earth vein that Fat Cat mentioned? Nye Tian frowned. He didn't know what the 9 dragons earth vein was, but it must be something extraordinary for Fat Cat to be so excited. Chapter 1550. Stop them! Seeing that the people outside wanted to rush into the valley, little Fat Cat let out a strange cry, its throat almost going numb. Those people were at least mid-god experts. If they were to rush into the valley, the map would be destroyed in an instant. Fat Cat had not sensed the complete 9 dragons geographical vein map. Therefore, he must not let anyone enter the valley. Get back! Nye Tian's face darkened. He roared and activated the forbidden space of Astral River. An invisible boundary spread out and enveloped Wang Lin and the others. Boom! Nye Tian leaped into the air and stabbed out with his sword. As the sword descended, a mid-stage mid-god was instantly killed. However, at the same time, the other people's attacks arrived. One after another, violent attacks rained down on Nye Tian, forcing him to retreat. Even if he activated the forbidden space of Astral River, it would still be too much for him to face more than a dozen mid-gods at the same time. In particular, there was Wang Lin, who was an early-stage high god. Nye Tian was even more constrained. Nye Tian, let me help you. At this moment, Chen Wuqing appeared with a black spear in his hand. He thrust the spear forward and the spear's shadow was like a dragon. It whizzed out and forced a warrior to retreat. This was the first time Nye Tian saw Chen Wuqing use a weapon. It seemed that Chen Wuqing was a spear spirit warrior. However, Chen Wuqing was currently in Nye Tian's forbidden space of Astral River. His strength was suppressed to a certain extent and the power of the dark dust spear could not be fully exerted. Alright, let's fight side by side. Nye Tian looked at Chen Wuqing. Immediately, A stream of starlight gushed out from his body and enveloped Qin Wuqing, isolating him from the forbidden space of Astral River. This way, he would no longer be suppressed by the forbidden space of Astral River. All right. Qin Wuqing nodded. He was very excited to be able to fight side by side with Nie Tian. His blood was boiling. You two small fries want to stop this commander? Seeing this, Wang Lin sneered. His entire body's aura rose and waves of energy surged in the air. With a sudden movement, it rushed towards Nie Tian and Qin Wuqing like a tsunami. Two ghosts of heaven and earth. Upon seeing this, Nie Tian let out a low roar, but he didn't retreat. Instead, the astral wings on his back trembled as his body transformed into a sword of slaughter, gushing forth. Boom! As he swung his sword, two strange snakes appeared. They were like two swords that could split the sky. They tore apart Wang Lin's violent chi wave attack. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound came from the void. It was extremely terrifying. Wang Lin felt a sharp aura coming at him and couldn't help but frown. He wanted to make another move, but it was too late. He could only retreat 1,000 meters away, dodging the attack of the snake. Brat, your strength is so strange. Wang Lin steadied himself. His face was green and red. He didn't expect Nie Tian to be this strong. He was able to force him back in a direct confrontation. The gap between the two of them was an entire realm. This was too unbelievable. Wang Lin didn't know that he was already inside Nie Tian's forbidden astral space boundary. The strangest part is yet to come. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curved into a cold smile. He turned around and glanced at Qin Wuqing, who was fighting with the others. Qin Wuqing was a genius. Although he only had the strength of an early-stage mid-god, his true battle strength was at the mid-stage or even late-stage mid-god realm. In addition to the suppression of the forbidden astral space boundary, he was more than enough to hold them back. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly sank. Killing intent surged in his heart. He didn't know when Fat Cat would be able to sense the complete 9 dragons' earth vein. Therefore, he absolutely couldn't let Wang Lin and the others leave alive. Humph! Wang Lin could feel the killing intent from Nie Tian. He sneered and said disdainfully, Nie Tian, you have already reached your limit by forcing me to retreat. Don't tell me you still want to kill me? In his opinion, Nie Tian had already reached his limit. However, he didn't use his ultimate move. Even though Nie Tian had surprised him, it wasn't enough to make him feel fear. You will know after you try. Nie Tian laughed coldly. Immediately after, he flapped his star soul wings and moved like a bolt of lightning, moving at an extremely fast speed. Courting death. Wang Lin couldn't help but roar when he saw Nie Tian rushing towards him. He raised his fists and bone scales grew on his arms. Bloodline power. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this. He didn't expect Wang Lin to have bloodline power in his body. However, he didn't stop. Instead, he rushed towards Wang Lin with even greater speed. Sky-devouring blood. While in the air, the sword intent and blood chi around him burst out uncontrollably. In an instant, the sword intent under the stimulation of the blood chi burst out with dazzling sword light. Coupled with the enhancement brought by the forbidden astral space boundary, the power of the sword intent was released to the extreme. Boom! In the air, a blood-red sword shadow appeared. As if it wanted to split the sky, it directly pressed down on Wang Lin's head. At this moment, Wang Lin suddenly felt an enormous pressure. He couldn't help but be stunned. His movements slowed down a bit. However, he instantly reacted and punched out with both fists. 2 violent fist shadows soared into the sky like 2 ferocious beasts. Boom! In the air, the fist shadows and the sword shadows collided with each other. A deafening explosion sounded in the air, and even the earth and sky trembled. At this moment, the others couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. It was hard to imagine that an early-stage mid-god could actually explode with such terrifying power. Bang! Bang! The next moment, two muffled explosions sounded. The two fist shadows couldn't withstand the pressure of the sword shadows and directly collapsed. The sword shadows were like mountains and directly pressed down on Wang Lin. No! Wang Lin suddenly felt a real killing intent approaching him. He shouted in fear, but it was already too late. The next moment the sword shadows fell. Wang Lin's body was directly submerged in the enormous sword essence. On the ground there was a huge pit with a circumference of 1,000 meters. The surrounding rocks and grass all collapsed. Nie Tian used the forbidden skill of the AO sword skill in the Star River forbidden space. Even an early-stage high god warrior couldn't resist it. Seeing this, the others all gasped and looked at Nie Tian in horror, as if they were looking at a monster. In everyone's eyes, Nie Tian was a monster, an abnormally abnormal monster. Seeing that Wang Lin was dead, Nie Tian stood in the air and let out a long breath. His face was as pale as a piece of paper. Boom! The next moment, an invisible wave spread out and the Star River forbidden space disappeared. The Star River forbidden space consumed a lot of the power of the stars. In addition, Nie Tian had used the Star Soul Divine Armament. The power of the stars could no longer maintain the Star River forbidden space. At this moment, Nie Tian had consumed a lot of the power of the stars and blood chi. His combat strength was at least halved. But when he turned around to look at the other Red Moon Guards, their eyes were filled with great fear. They didn't have the slightest desire to resist. They didn't know that the Star River forbidden space had been activated and disappeared. They thought that Nie Tian's combat strength was so terrifying. Even Wang Lin, who had the strength of a high god, was killed. How could they be a match for Nie Tian? Nie Tian's figure moved and landed at the entrance of the valley. His eyes couldn't help but sink. He didn't know whether he should kill these people in front of him or not. 9 Dragons Earth Vein done. At this moment, Fat Cat's strange voice sounded in the valley. It sounded very happy. Nie Tian immediately turned around and looked at the valley. He saw countless light spots surging and faintly gathered into the image of 9 dragons. The 9 dragons were moving stealthily under the ground.